All right, so I'm going to try to gear this lecture towards beginners because it looks like most of the people here run, but they haven't really tried to develop into an ultra running athlete. And I've experienced a very different type of lifestyle and performance level from adopting a lot of the principles that I'm going to talk about. I'll tell you a little bit about myself. A lot of you know who I am and what my running accomplishments have been, but I'll repeat some of it anyway. I've been running for about 20 years. I'm 34 years old. I've been pretty steady in running for 20 years. I've had a couple of years where I might dip down and didn't run that much, but I've been a consistent runner for 2 decades now. I do feel like I have a pretty good handle on the sport. I feel like I've developed at a level where I'm quite mature in in knowing how to run, from short distances all the way up to mega distances. I've run about 40 ultra distances in the last 8 years. I've run about 60 marathons, and I've run hundreds and hundreds of shorter distance races. I've trained from as little as 10 miles a week up to over 220 miles in a week. I've run a lot on trails, I've run a lot on roads. So I feel like I've got good experience in a lot of varied degrees. This lecture is going to be on ultra running. So I'm going to get right into it. Ultra running, I'm going to tell you what's the definition of ultra running. Most people that you ask what the definition of ultra running is, and they're going to tell you it's any distance greater than 26.2 miles, anything greater than a standard marathon distance. For most ultra races, that's going to be 50 kilometers, about 31 miles. If somebody asks me what the definition of ultra running is, I don't define it as a distance. Ultra running for me is kind of a state of existence. And I've come to believe that there's 4 stages that you need to pass through in order to experience what I call ultra running. And those 4 stages are the physical, the mental, the emotional, and then the spiritual. And for me, you have to cross through them in that order to experience a state of ultra running. So we'll start with the physical first. That's the most obvious part of running. When you run, you're using your body in its almost full capacity. You're using your upper body, your lower body, your midsection. Everything is working together. It's what I would consider the most natural form of exercise that we can do as humans. It feels very natural to run for me. So in ultra running, the first thing that I need to get through is running to a point where my physical body doesn't want to run anymore. And that could happen for somebody who's never run 10 miles before, and they could get to that point at mile 8, and then their body doesn't want to run anymore. And at that point, they are crossing through stage 1. And most people don't cross through stage 1. Most people stop running when their body just gets tired, and they just don't want to cross over to the next stage. And it takes experience, determination, and mental fortitude. And that's the second stage of what I consider part of ultra running, is going through the mental challenges of continuing to run when your physical says no. So your mind takes over. And that takes a lot of practice. And I feel like I really haven't experienced an ultra running session if I don't really struggle with myself and question, why am I doing this? I'm in pain. This is pointless, this isn't healthy, this doesn't make sense. There's no logic to what I'm trying to do. My body's telling me no, so I should just stop. So to push through that is hard. But if you want to experience some of the benefits of pushing past the mental part of it, you've got to just keep going. So the third stage of after I say to myself, this stinks, I hate this, I want to stop right now, I want to walk, I want to slow down, is I break through that by having experience and knowing that if I just keep going, it's going to get better. And I try to keep my focus on the fact that I know that I can achieve this because I'm powerful. And that's where my emotional state takes over. And I call it like running with heart. It's when your mind says no, your body says no, but there's this emotional part of your body. And I become emotional sometimes. Sometimes when I'm running and I'm in a lot of pain and I'm really unhappy, I'll start to cry. And it's a tremendous relief. It's really, it's intense. It's really intense. And I really, it's a real personal moment for myself. I connect with myself on a very deep level. I connect with my surroundings. And I embrace the fact that I'm struggling deeply. That emotional part of ultra running is something that I think very few people allow themselves to experience. And it's probably one of the main reasons I keep going back to pushing myself to these levels, because I feel a very deep connection with myself, and it feels primal, it feels really good, it feels right. And then when you add the physical, mental, and emotional all together, then it becomes a spiritual state for me, and that's kind of the final stage of ultra running. When the physical is at its peak, where your body's giving everything it can. Your mind is pushing you to your absolute limits and beyond. And then you are running with heart, with emotion. Then you bring those together and you have this like state of spiritual existence, or what I call ultra running. And it doesn't happen very often. But when it happens, I mean, it's like an out-of-body experience. You know, I can't really put into words and describe to people what it's like to run for 12 hours as fast as you can and to just keep going. When there's no logical reason to keep going, your body says no. There's no logic to it, and that's part of the beauty of it. You know, a lot of times I'm running around in my life, I'm trying to make money, or I'm trying to build something or create something, and there's a goal. But when you're ultra running, sometimes there's no destination. Sometimes you don't know where or why you're doing what you're doing. And to accept that that's okay, there's some beauty in that. To have no purpose other than just to be running. It's so simple, it's so natural, it's so primal. And to mix in a fruitarian diet with that, it brings it to a level that's just, you got to experience it to understand it. So ultra running is an extreme state of existence. I don't really look at it as a sport. For me, it's not even like a lifestyle. It's kind of my religion in a lot of ways. I run. It's my prayer time. It's my meditation. It's my state of existence, and I love it. And the more I run, the more I experience this kind of state of life, and it's made me very happy. It's changed a lot of other things in my life. Since becoming an ultra runner and really experiencing states of ultra running, my needs and desires in life have become a lot more simple. It's been a catalyst for change in so many things. So I'm a big proponent of ultra running. I think it's something that's really, really fantastic. It's without a doubt the greatest experience I've ever had in my entire life in anything I've ever done. So I'll tell you how I've developed into that ultra runner, and we'll talk about the physical, because after hearing what I'm saying, you think to yourself, oh, I've just got to go out and just run and just keep running until like my feet are killing me and until I'm going to fall apart, and I just got to keep running. And if you try to do that, you probably will fall apart, and your feet will kill, and you'll get blisters, and you won't be able to run anymore. And so there's a build-up development to becoming an ultra runner, and I've developed that over 20 years. I don't think it takes 20 years to become an ultra runner or to experience a level of ultra running, but it does take a lot of commitment. So I'm going to talk about the physical and some of the principles and the basics of developing your physical body to be able to handle a state of ultra running existence. So the first thing I think I'll talk about in the physical is nutrition and how it correlates to body fat. If you want to run for a really long time, one of the most limiting factors is going to be your stored body fat. Body fat has absolutely no purpose other than being stored energy. And I think I have about 3 to 4% body fat, definitely less than 5% right now. And I have enough fat on me to probably run all the way back to New York City and back here without any problem. So what I'm trying to say is if you're carrying as a male, more than 5% body fat, you're carrying extra weight that you really don't need. And if you're a woman, I know I have extreme opinions on this, but I think women optimally, at least at an Olympic level, at the highest performance level, I think most women shouldn't have more than like maybe 2 to 4% more body fat than men, or definitely under 10%. If you look at any of the world records in running or in most athletic sports where agility, movement, speed is important, most women have almost the same levels of body fat as men. It's not 10% like they recommend in sedentary lifestyles. So I know it's a little extreme for some people, they might disagree with me, but I've experienced a much improved state of ultra running by getting my body fat as low as possible. So the way I keep my body fat down is I eat a fruitarian diet. I eat high water content fruits. The food I eat is usually 2 to 5% fat, and I am 2 to 5% fat. I stay away from overt fats. I've been doing that for almost 4 years now. I don't get sick. I don't get injured. I don't believe that a high-fat diet is optimal at all. And the lower your body fat, the less injuries you're going to have in your running, the better cooling you're going to be able to have in hot weather. If you don't have high body fat or you have lower body fat, you're going to be able to cool much faster, which is really important, especially in warm weather conditions. Circulation is going to be improved with low body fat, and you're going to be more efficient. If you have more body fat, you need to actually burn more calories to carry it around everywhere with you. So the less you weigh, the less you need to eat. And when you're running for a really long time, that can play a pretty important role. So for me, the fruitarianism is a huge part of my success. I eat super simple. I love papaya, I love watermelon, I love tomatoes, cucumbers, anything that's super high water content. That's what I eat. So then we'll talk about the next part of the physical is years of buildup or how much you're running. It takes a lot of patience to become an ultra runner. If you really want to try to experience a state of ultra running, I would set a goal for yourself. If you're a marathon runner, I would say set a 50-mile goal for yourself, and you need to run. You need to run a lot. You need to build your body up so it can handle the stresses of running all the time. So I would have patience. If you're a marathon runner and you want to run a 50-mile race or a 100-mile race, I would set the goal a year out. I wouldn't try to do it too quickly, because A lot of people try to go into ultra running at what I call a kamikaze state, where they don't do the work, they just jump into the race and they destroy their bodies. And they don't really experience a state of ultra running, they experience a state of hell. And I've been there, and it's not fun. It doesn't bring you back to the sport, and you can get resentful and angry at somebody like me for even recommending that you try it. So I would put yourself in a position to say, okay, I want to experience a state of ultra running in a responsible way. I'm going to build up my mileage over a number of months or even years. And we can talk about that more if you want afterwards. Everybody's got a different level of training, so people can handle different loads, but you want to have patience in building up your mileage. And then I would talk about specific run training in terms of what your ultra running goals are, depending on where you live, or depending on where you want to try to enter a race. For me, I just came back from Leadville, Colorado. It's extremely mountainous. Running on flat roads, on asphalt, is probably a really bad idea. Even if I was training, running a lot on roads, on flat roads, if I put myself in a mountainous region where the trails are technical and it's just lots of vertical climbing and descent, it's almost a different sport. So it's this specific run training that is important to recognize if you have goals of running a mountain race or a long distance road race. The same goes for the guys that run the mountains. If I bring them down to the roads and we're running on flat ground, they're going to fall apart too, because they just haven't been training that way. Sleep and recovery. And note that I did not use the word rest. A lot of people use the word rest in place of sleep. And I can run 50 miles every single day if I can get 10 hours of sleep a night. So my best performances in running have always been with a lot of sleep, not a lot of rest. It's always been, if I can sleep a lot, if I can physically sleep at night, I'm better off running more than running less. And the absolute greatest limiting factor in my own personal performance right now is sleep. And I can't stress that enough. If you want to achieve things in ultra running at a high level, you have to figure out how to sleep, not taper or run less. It's all about getting more sleep. It's real simple. There's nothing else complicated about it. And I've absolutely hit all my best performances doing a huge mileage right up into the race. I ran a 2:28 marathon last year in Boston. With 7 days before the race, I ran a 100-kilometer ultra marathon race at a fast pace. I can name let's see. I ran my personal best Vermont 100. I won this race about a month ago. I think I ran 150 miles 6 days up before the race, but I was sleeping a lot. Just a little something I'll throw in there. Most of these races, most ultra marathons start really early in the morning, because if you're going to run 100 miles or 50 miles, they usually want to get you going really early, because the back of the packers are going to take a very long time. So if the race starts at 5 o'clock in the morning, 3-4 days before the race, I force myself to get up at 4 o'clock in the morning, so I can try to get my body clock reset for the time distance for getting up early in the morning. If you want to do an ultra marathon, the worst thing you can do for yourself is get very little sleep the night before. A lot of people go into these races, there's a 4 a.m. wake-up call, or even a 3 a.m. wake-up call, like there was in the Leadville 100-mile race that I just did. To get 4 hours of sleep and then try to run 100 miles in the mountains is just stupid. I mean, it's just...
What if you can't sleep?
Well, that's why if you can't sleep, you need 4 or 5 days leading up to the race, you need to force yourself to get up at 3 o'clock in the morning, so you get tired at 5 o'clock in the afternoon and you go to sleep at 6 o'clock.
What if you're not racing? What if you just want to get to the finish?
If you want to try to cover 100 miles of distance at any time, at any pace, you should want to try to sleep as much as possible the night before. That's an absolute must. Okay, let's see. What's next? If anybody has any questions during any part of this, just raise your hand, because it's better that we cover them one by one rather than coming back at the end of the.
Yes, Michael. What is your main major breakthrough in improving your sleep? If you can name one factor that would influence your sleep significantly.
Well, I think the question is, what's been the major breakthrough with going to sleep or getting enough sleep? To be totally honest with you, it's still a huge problem in my life. I'd say it's probably the single biggest issue that I'm trying to still continue to deal with. I kind of know what I need to do, but I don't always do that. I know eating a lot during the earlier part of the day is really important. Having to get up to go to the bathroom a lot at night is really a bad thing. If I want to go to sleep, let's say by 8 o'clock at night, I really need to stop eating by 5. And I need to almost force myself to eat more even when I'm not hungry during the early part of the day, so I get enough calories. The other thing I use when I go to sleep now is I use earplugs. I have a really good eye mask that I wear. There's some really good eye masks you can buy. It's like foam. It's got a plastic cover on it. It's almost like a ski mask. And I wear a hat. So when I go to sleep, it looks like I'm going skiing. And I'm trying to create this environment where I'm enclosed. And so yeah, that's actually something that's, I should show you guys some pictures of that. It's pretty cool. Yeah, my wife will tell you I look pretty funny when I'm going to bed.
You still use that toilet attachment? No, it used to be something else. The hose or
Yeah, no, I'm not doing the hose anymore. Let's talk about some other stuff. Yeah, so going to sleep early is key, and I'm not a pro at that.
I get the earplugs and the mask, but why the hat?
Why the hat? Yeah, I think I started sleeping with a hat in the wintertime when it was just a little cold in the house. And I found that, I don't know, it just made me feel more comfortable. There's something covering my head. I don't know if it's pretty cool. A lightweight, thin hat.
It's like he goes into himself like a turtle.
Yeah, the earplugs. It's good. I think you should try it. I think I've seen old pictures of or old movies of people wearing like a nightcap. So I think it's something that was popular a while ago, and I recommend it. Try it. Yeah, I like wearing a hat to sleep. All right.
I have a question.
Yeah.
I think most people with people that want to not deal with certain things, want to run ultras, or do you think it's just a challenge?
I'm sorry. I don't know if I understand the question.
I think she's asking if you are getting out of housework by running.
My wife's asking me this question, by the way, so honey, we can talk about this later. I think it's a legitimate question. Is ultra running a little bit addictive? And I think yes. And anybody who exercises knows that you get an endorphin high, and it's a state of euphoria when you exercise. And
No, is it an excuse to get out of housework and other things, other responsibilities around the house?
Ultra running can definitely be an addictive sport.
Okay, Obama, you want to go around?
Yeah. No, I've definitely neglected other things in my life for my goals in running. I run a lot. I run 25 to up to 30 hours a week. It's a lot of time. It's my time. I realize that when I'm done with my run, it's my time is over. It's some people watch TV or sitcom, or you go to a movie, or they go out to dinner or something. My time for myself, my enjoyment and pretty much all my free time goes into my running, and that's something that you've got to accept if you've got to make sacrifices in other areas of your life if you want to achieve something great. So for me, that's what I'm doing right now. So yes, sometimes I do give up on housework for my running.
I wanted that on video.
Yeah. All right.
I just want to ask one more thing. Not about that.
Okay, this is your last question, dear.
Explain to people that somebody like me that never ran past a marathon was able to run 2 days before I signed up for the ultra, and I was able to do it. Why could I do it? Why could I do it without the training? I mean, I did it slowly, but why was I able to do it? What do you think is, what could you tell people so they don't get afraid to do it?
All right, I'll deviate from my lecture a little bit to explain the situation with my wife. My wife is a good example of something that is quite extraordinary. My wife has wanted to develop more into a runner just being married to me. And I've tried not to push her into these things because I think it's an organic process. You don't want somebody to do something that they really don't want to do, because then they'll be resentful of it, and I don't want her to be resentful of her running. But last year we went to a 24-hour race where the race is for 24 hours, and whoever runs the most distance in 24 hours wins. And it's on a 1 mile loop bike path.
No, the 50-mile race. I mean, the 12-hour race first.
Well, let me use this example. So this is a pretty extreme race. I mean, we're going to get on this flat bike path that's a mile circle, and we're just going to run around it for 24 hours. And I feel like I'm more of a mature runner, and to me it seems like just a monumental idea. It's just like, wow, that's intense. And my wife, she's run a few marathons, and she was 2 days before the race, she's like, yeah, okay, I'll try. And I mean, that was inspiring to me. I thought that was pretty. I thought, ignorance is bliss. That's what I thought, Like, she just has no idea what she's getting herself into, But I thought it was pretty cool that she was willing to just kind of jump into it. Now, and what's funny is I had a bad race. I dropped out after 15 hours. She kept going. She ran for, I think, just over 18 hours. And I think about it a lot. I thought that was pretty extraordinary. But what I will say is that I don't believe you are able to experience a true sense of ultra running when you jump into something like that. Because although she gutted it out for 18 hours, she hadn't done all the build-up work that I was talking about, where she hasn't put in the physical adaptations over years and years of continuously sticking with running. I feel like she hasn't pushed herself to a point where she's gone through the mental struggle of having to keep going when it really doesn't make a lot of sense. This race was really a social event. Everybody's running together in a circle, and there's a lot of distractions, and you're struggling, and you're giving it a lot of effort. I don't want to belittle, your experience, but for me, the true state of ultra running is a singular event, and it's all within yourself. And the best times I've experienced ultra running, it's been totally alone with nobody, and a lot of times not even in a race. But it's good to point out that you can do way more than your perceived limits, like my wife did. She never really run for more than maybe 5 or 6 hours, and then she all of a sudden was running for 18 hours. So I think it's inspirational, and it's commendable. It's something that I'm impressed with. But true ultra running, a state of ultra running for me is not a one-time event. It takes a lot of development. I'm going to talk about a couple practical issues, equipment needs. I'm a huge fan of these socks. These socks are called Indigene socks. Some people I'm sure a lot of people know about these things. These things really changed my running. I'm a huge fan of these things. They're toe socks. Each one of your toes gets a little sock. Blisters can be absolutely debilitating. you can have everything going for you, but if you get some bad blisters on your toes, if your shoes get wet, because when you ultra run, sometimes you're running through the night when it's raining or through snow, through mud, and blisters can be just a game ender. So I highly recommend Indigene socks. And then another thing I recommend highly is really lightweight shoes. If I was talking a lot about body fat before, if you're running with heavy shoes on, it's like running with an extra 10 pounds around your waist. Lightweight shoes is a huge benefit in ultra running. I run with shoes that weigh about 6.5 ounces, and they're racing shoes basically. I can't go back to those heavy, long distance shoes if I just can't run them anymore. I feel like I'm wearing boots.
Is that for 2 shoes or?
That's for 1 shoe.
What about Vibrams?
Vibrams. I've tried on the 5-finger Vibrams, and I didn't like them. They're super minimal, but I just felt more comfortable having an enclosed toe box, and I like having a little bit more support, a little bit more cushion on my foot. I know they work for a lot of people. They like them. I love wearing flip-flops, walking around, but they kind of took too long to put on, and I felt like they didn't have enough cushioning for me. I just wasn't a big fan, and I'm not a fan of barefoot running. I don't see the logic personally in risking stepping on a rock or a piece of broken glass and hurting myself. I know there's this theory behind benefits of your foot getting stronger running barefoot, but I just don't. I just for the practical reason of I just don't want to get hurt. I just don't do barefoot running. So I'll put that out there now. It works for some people. I know you can build up the calluses on your feet and everything, but I like running with shoes on. Then another thing that's important is something as simple as sunglasses. If you're going to be running outside all day long in the sun, your eyes just get trashed. And when your eyes get trashed and you're squinting and you're frowning all day, wearing a pair of sunglasses can really make a big difference. I used to not run with sunglasses. Now I try to run with sunglasses all the time, and it really keeps my face relaxed, and it allows me to try to just stay relaxed in my whole face. So I highly recommend sunglasses. Another really important piece of equipment in running is this watch, a GPS watch. This has about an 18 to 20 hour battery. It's made by Garmin. It's a 310 XT. This really changed my ultra running. I know running is a sport that doesn't take a lot of equipment, and there's a lot of things I like about the purity of running, that you don't really need anything. But this one piece of technological equipment, I highly recommend it. I really like it. It tells you, obviously how far you've run. And being a goal-oriented person, I like round numbers. And the watch tends to push me, I'd say generally 10 to 15% more than I would normally go. So it's a motivator for me. I like to see round numbers. So if I'm going out for, a 30-mile run, at 28 miles, if I'd normally just kind of give up, I just stick it out for another 2 miles. So I'm a big proponent of the GPS watch. I like it.
What about heart rate monitor?
I used to run with heart rate monitors. I pretty much know what my heart rate is just standing here. I can almost feel my heart beat in my chest. I don't need that equipment anymore. I used to use it. Now I don't like wearing a strap around my chest, so I don't use it. What else is also good about the GPS watch is if you're going on a run through the woods, these watches have a function of, you can see a map. You don't get lost. I mean, I've gone running out in places I've never run before, and I'll run 25 miles in one direction. I'll hit the watch to take me back to my starting location, and I'll just follow the tracks back to where I was. So if you're going to really be an ultra runner where you're going to run for 10, 12, 15 hours in training, this could save your life in certain situations.
Do you use any online software to log your training?
Yeah, Garmin has a really good free online system where you can synchronize all your data files, and I use it. I log my mileage there generally, so it's good.
Hey, Michael, can you tell us how much you pay for it, or what they generally cost?
The Garmin, they have smaller versions that don't have as long a battery life that are, I think like $100 or $200 the most. I think this watch is $350. It's pretty expensive, but besides shoes, it's pretty much the only piece of equipment that I use, and it's pretty beat up. I mean, it's fallen apart on me, but I've had this for almost 2 years, and it still works really well. So I highly recommend the 310 XT by Garmin. Then another thing that's good to have, a piece of equipment, is a headlamp. If you're going to run at night, having a really good headlamp is just a simple piece of equipment, but spend $80, $100 on a really good headlamp. Running at night is part of ultra running. And there's something fantastic about going out for a run during the day and actually running like after the sun goes down and it's nighttime and you're running outside at night and you're still running. It's really amazing.
Can you wear one that has like AAA size batteries on your forehead, or do you have to find something with like watch batteries?
Like I would, if you're really serious about getting into ultra running, I would spend like $80 or $100 on a rechargeable high-end headlamp. There's a little rechargeable battery pack in the back, and it's got a really big bright beam. You want to try not to buy a headlamp that creates a circle on the ground, because if you're running at night and you're looking at a circle on the ground for hours, you turn the headlamp off and you still see a circle. So they have new headlamps now that make a diffused light, and I don't have my headlamp with me. I should have brought that, I'm sorry, but there's some really good headlamps. I would try them on. I wouldn't buy them online. I would go to like an outdoor store and use them. Go in the back room, turn the lights off, and check them out. Another piece of equipment that I recommend is a really lightweight backpack. When you go ultra running, if you're really going to be an ultra runner, you need to carry calories, and I'll talk about that later. Having a really comfortable backpack that's got a couple of chest straps, you want it to fit it really tightly. You don't want it to bounce around. You don't want it to chafe you. Getting a really good backpack is really important.
Who makes that?
It's Camelback. I bought a bunch of Camelbacks, and what I do is I don't actually like to have the hydration bladder coming through a hose. I like to have water bottles. So I don't like to have too much weight come right around my center of gravity. I like to carry the weight in my bottles. So what I do is I just take I buy a hydration pack, I just take out the hydration unit, and I just use it as a regular backpack. This backpack's probably got like 10,000 miles on it. I've been using this for a really long time. And then, so water bottles. I recommend insulated water bottles like this. This is made by Ultimate, or Nathan makes really good ones too. You can put cold liquid in here or hot liquid. Sometimes in the wintertime, I'll put hot water in here in the morning, and it stays warm. Having a wide strap is really important. You can put some dates in here, and I really like this kind of water bottle.
And then we become your best friends in 100 miles.
Yeah. You saw the movie Castaway with Tom Hanks when he became best friends with his volleyball Wilson. This is Wilson here.
Can you talk about, back to shoes, can you talk about the life of a shoe and how long you wear it and when you change to a new pair? And I know with the lighter shoes, they kind of get less mileage out of them.
Yeah, I go through a pair of shoes probably every month. It's kind of expensive. One tip that I can talk about shoes, and I'll explain when I decide to get rid of them, but one good tip on shoes that I recommend to everybody is men's and women's shoes are the same. The only difference between, let's say, my size in a men's and a women's is usually about 2 sizes. So I'm in men's, I'm a size 9. In a women's, I'm a size 11. Now, there are not that many women that wear size 11 shoe. So what I do is I buy women's shoes, and they're almost always on sale on the internet because they're overstock. And I don't buy the pink ones. But there's if I can buy the size men's in a 9 and for $100, I can buy the size women's in 11 for $40. It's the same shoe. It's just it's all marketing. It's a good tip. I recommend buying, if you're a woman, buy men's shoes. They're usually 2 sizes smaller, and a really small men's shoe is probably going to be overstocked, and you get them really cheap. So that's one tip to save money on shoes. In terms of, I go through shoes, as soon as the hard rubber on the bottom burns off and the heel just starts getting trashed away, I get rid of them right away. I believe that shoes are important. The problem is, I think if you wait too long to replace your shoes, your gait will change, the way you land, and just your whole biomechanics will be thrown off dramatically when you finally get rid of that old shoe and buy a new pair of shoes, because then the heel height is going to be much different. The way your foot hits the ground and strikes is going to be upwards of an inch different. So I would recommend, at least for myself, it's just a safety precaution. As soon as the heel starts really wearing down, I don't take chances. I get another pair of shoes, because I don't want to go through that transition where I go from a heel that's like, cut off like this to now I'm getting a new pair of shoes, and it's totally different type of running.
Do you alternate them at all? Alternate your shoes?
No, I recently was running in Sauconys, and I wore the same model for almost 3 years. I bought 15 pairs at one time. And I just stock them up and just go through them. And I think it's good to stock up shoes, because then, you'll get back from a run and you'll see the heels wearing off, and it's like, okay, it's time to get to switch up the shoes, and then you have 5 pairs in the closet, and you just get them out and put them on.
What if you have like a 9-to-5 job, or a job that doesn't let you train as much?
Well, we're going to talk about that more.
I was meaning with the alternating shoes, like sessions. So you got like, say, 3 pairs, and you alternate.
Yeah, I mean, I've got 3 pairs of shoes. They're all the same model.
Yeah, same model.
But they're all like, one's at work, one's in my car, one's in my. Okay. So my wife just asked me about, what if, what was your question about working? What if you have to work 9 to 5?
Like, what if you have a different type of job where it takes so much out of you that you can't?
So this is if I can kind of drive one message home to everybody today, it's get your exercise as part of your lifestyle. And for me, some of you people know I run to work and I run home from work. So when I run, it's a necessity. And psychologically, I don't get up in the morning and get my exercise. I get up in the morning and I got to get to work. So some people might not live near work. You might have to drive to work. You might have to take the public transportation to work. Maybe you're very far from work where running's not an option. Take the train and the bus, drive halfway or 3/4 the way, whatever it is. Just make exercise part of a function of getting something done during the day. So that's like the secret to my success as an ultra runner. I've lived 15 miles from my office, and I get up in the morning and I don't even think about, am I going to exercise today or when am I going to make the time? I have to get to work. I just put on my shoes, I throw on my backpack, and I just get to work.
And try to find a good route, like the most scenic.
Do you shower when you get to work?
Yeah, I'm very fortunate to have a situation where I installed a shower in where I work, and that was more important than setting up like the internet access. Like, I needed a place to take a shower when I got to work. And before I moved into this new office, I didn't have a shower at my previous office, and I used to just go in the bathroom and stick my head under the sink. Now, I realize some people have to wear a suit, and it can be difficult. There's always a way to make it work. If you can't run to work, so bring your running clothes to work and then run home. And just stock up, have 10 pairs of shorts, or, bring your clothes in the morning or something. I mean, there's always a way to make it happen. But I would make, if you want to become a good ultra runner, you've got to run every day. I run doubles. When I'm training for 100-mile races, I run to work and then I run home from work. So I run 30 miles a day. But it's 2 hours in the morning and 2 hours in the evening, and it's the greatest part of my lifestyle. And I don't feel like I'm exercising. I'm commuting by foot. And I do better work when I get to work, because right after you exercise, your brain is on. You're just clicking away. I get to work, jump in the shower. Sometimes I don't even take a shower, just sit down, and I get so much more done. So exercising, and then as soon as you're done exercising, when the endorphins are going, you can get so much more done. You're focused, you're not distracted. During your run, you're thinking about what you've got to do when you get to work, you're prioritizing. So, like I said, if I can send one message to you guys, is if you really want to get your lives in order with your exercise, make it part of your, routine as a necessity. Make it part of your transportation. And then specifically for ultra running, I think I've developed better as an ultra runner by doing doubles, running twice a day. If I was running 30 miles at one time every day, I think it would wear me down. But I think I get the same benefits, if not greater benefits, by running 15 miles in the morning and 15 miles in the evening. So doubles is really an important part of my training. I think most people would think that the second run of the day you'd be really tired. I feel better almost every time on my second run. So that's an interesting thing for me to mention. I think doubles and the second run of the day actually feeling better is something that I really like. And
What about cross training?
if you're running 25 to 30 hours a week like me, or if you really want to compete at a high level or really do well at the ultra distances, over 100 kilometers or 100 miles, I don't think you have time to really cross train. I don't cross train at all. I think when you run with 2 bottles, when I take my shirt off, I have pretty good defined pectoral muscles, back muscles. These bottles, it's almost like cross-country skiing or lifting weights in some respects. Also, if you run up and down hills, that's almost like cross-training. Yeah. Another thing I'll talk about is staying motivated. Having training partners are really important. There's a couple people that I run with on a pretty consistent basis. They definitely keep me out there. They help me enjoy my running more. So having somebody to run with, at least on a semi-regular basis, I think is really important. And then if you don't have somebody to run with and you're just not motivated, if you got some really good music, put it on 20 minutes before you kind of want to go for a run. That will pump you up. Put on some really good music, like 20 minutes before you want to go for your run. Just put it on, put on your headphones, and that'll get you out the door. Sometimes I'll listen to music just to get out the door, and then as soon as I'm out the door, I'll turn it off. Because I go through stages of liking music and not liking music while I run. But if I listen to music before I go for my run, it definitely gets me going. So music is a big motivator. Music makes the miles go by. Dean Karnazes wrote that in one of his books. And when things really start to suck and you're just tired of running, you want to take a break, you're getting sick of pushing yourself, music definitely can help. It's kind of a crutch. I got a love-hate relationship with it, but I'd recommend it if you need it for the extra motivation. Another thing that I'll mention about cross-training, which you guys might find unusual, is I do something called EMS, electrical muscle stimulation. I have a desk job. So when I get to work, I'm sitting. Sometimes I'm sitting for 8 hours in one place. And electrical muscle stimulation is, some of you might know, it's a pad that you put on your skin. It's like an EKG, and you send an electrical current through your muscles, and it contracts the muscle. I use this on my quadriceps. I use it mainly if I'm going to do mountain running trails. I don't have the opportunity to run up and down steep hills that are really get my quads really tough, working and living in New York City. So I put on this electrical muscle stimulating device on my quadriceps, and when I'm sitting at my desk, my quads are contracting, and it can be extremely painful when you turn it up. If anybody wants to see the EMS unit, I've got it back at the main Delos Lodge. I'd be happy to show you how to use it. Trying it on for the first time is pretty freaky. Watching your muscles move and move a lot without you having to move them is pretty cool.
It's good for recovery too sometimes.
Yeah, it can be used as different ways to use the EMS to either fry your muscles. It can be almost like a massaging effect. But I found that using the electrical muscle stimulator has really toughened up my quadriceps. I can run flat ground and then go to a mountain environment, run downhill for hours, and my quads are still in one piece. They don't really get beat up. So some people kind of consider it a little bit like cheating, but electrical muscle stimulation definitely can toughen up your muscles if you want to get an extra edge. So I'd recommend that. Then we'll talk about, let's see.
Your upper body, Michael?
Huh?
Your upper body, you also use it?
No, I only use electrical muscle stimulation on my quadriceps.
Not on the calves?
No, it can, EMS session takes about an hour per cycle that when you use the machine.
We used to do it on the calves.
So, there's only so much I can do. I guess you could use it all over your body, but if you're going to run a lot and then use EMS all day, I mean, you're just, you're going to be like Drago and Rocky or something. I don't know.
What about stress fractures?
Stress fractures. Since becoming a fruitarian, I've had no injuries at all. That is something extraordinary. Well, I was really worried for a long time that I was going to come down with a stress fracture, because when I first started getting into ultra marathons, I developed a tibial stress fracture. I was running about 110 miles a week, and my leg just broke. And I figured if I was just eating fruits and vegetables, probably the same thing would happen. And I have, bar none, had no injuries since becoming a fruitarian.
When did you become fruitarian?
In January 2008,
4 years ago.
yeah, almost about, 3 3/4 years ago. And I've had, the first time in my life. And I'm not one of these genetically gifted people where I just never got injured. Before I became a fruitarian, I'd have everything from plantar fasciitis in my feet to hip pains, lower back pains, Achilles tendonitis, patella problems. I mean, I've got boxes of devices for, how to cure these ailments, from Chopat straps to, these plantar fasciitis boots and socks, stretching devices. I don't stretch. I mean, I just eat fruit and I run all day, and I'm just
I
like,
used to limp after a half
yeah,
marathon.
it's pretty amazing.
Do you stretch after?
No, I don't stretch at all. Never.
How flexible are you?
I don't think it matters. I think, what matters is that I can run 100 miles and I feel fine.
What was your diet like before you were fruitarian?
I think it was easy for me to transition into being a fruitarian because in a lot of ways I kind of ate a pretty simple diet. I was into macrobiotics. I ate a lot of cooked vegetables. I ate a lot of fruit, and I had grains. And when I eat those vegan healthy cookies that they market, I knew they weren't healthy for me, and I didn't like eating them. So when I read 80-10-10, it was like overnight. I was like, oh, this is it. I'm there. And it's been like that ever since. One thing that a lot of people ask me about is salt. And this has been a real big issue for me. I don't feel like there's been a lot of research in this department, in this area. There's not a lot of fruitarian ultra runners. There's also an epidemic going on of hyponatremia in triathlons and any endurance sports. And the reason why there's like an epidemic of hyponatremia happening is because the diet in any westernized culture is so high in salt that when these athletes go into these events and they sweat profusely for hours after hours after hour, they're going through like this huge internal cleanse, and they're ridding themselves of all this salt, but their body goes into like this state of shock where they've just thrown all the salt out of their body, and they go into convulsions. People pass out in these races because they don't have enough salt. So now when you go to these races, like the medical teams get up in front of all the runners or the triathletes before these events, and they say, take salt pills. because you're going to get hyponatremic and you're going to be in the hospital. You could have you could have seizures. You could die. So for a long time, I just thought I just needed a lot more salt like everybody else. But I'm on a really low salt diet. And up until I'd say even just about the last year and a half, I was still taking a lot of salt pills during my ultra of running. And I found that for me, the higher intensity or the more that I was sweating, the more salt that I needed to take. But I will tell you that after being on a fruitarian diet for almost 4 years, eating a very low salt diet, I'm now actually taking a lot less salt when I race. In the Leadville race this a couple days ago, I think I had 7 salt pills in 18 hours. And a year ago, I think I had like 60 or 70 salt pills in a hot 100-mile race. Now, there's a lot of different ways to look at what I just said. You say, well, when I took 60 or 70 salt pills a year ago, it was in a really hot weather race in Vermont where it was 90 degrees, and I was also drinking a tremendous amount of fluids. So I was going to the bathroom a lot. So I was taking in a ton of salt, but I was also flushing it out. I was sweating it out, and I was peeing it out. And in the Leadville race, it was cold, and in the first 8 hours, I went to the bathroom once. So I wasn't cycling through a lot of salt through my body at all. So I took a lot less salt. So if you're transitioning from a cooked food diet, or you're not 100% raw, or you're eating raw foods with salt, and you want to try to be an ultra runner, you're probably going to need to take more salt in a hot weather event than if you're somebody who's eating no salt, added salt in your diet, and you're in a cold weather event. So salt is an absolute necessity. I mean, we can't, our heart muscles don't contract without sodium. We need sodium, we just can't have too much. I would experiment carefully with salt. I've had a lot of success and a lot of failures trying to figure out how to keep my sodium electrolyte balance in check. I know really well how to do it now, and so it's hard for me to necessarily say what I'm doing can translate into how you're eating or how you're exercising or where you're running. But I would say salt is something of pivotal importance in ultra endurance. And the higher intensity, the higher the heat, the more you drink, it's all going to play into how much salt you need. So it's a much bigger discussion. I think I could probably talk about it for an hour for all different scenarios. But if salt is an absolute necessity, and I've been in situations where I thought I was going to collapse, and salt changed everything. I've been in situations where I was hallucinating and I couldn't see anything, and I took 10 salt tablets and I felt great. I've also taken 10 salt tablets and I couldn't run because my knees got swollen because I was retaining so much water. So it's really, it's a double-edged sword, and it's complicated. So it's something to experiment with. If you're going to take supplemental salts during races like I do, I use S-caps. You can buy them on the internet. I think they're very good. And that's about as much as I think I can talk about right now without getting into a really long discussion. Another thing that you guys might be surprised at is I sometimes take Gas X pills, or like an over-the-counter pill to eliminate any air that's going to be in my intestinal tract. Now, the reason I'll take Gas X is because if I get really bloated, it could be in a race. And in a race, I don't always just eat raw fruits and vegetables. Sometimes when I'm in a race and I'm trying to win the race, and there's somebody coming up behind me or I'm chasing somebody, I will go through an aid station as fast as I can. I literally don't want to stop at all. And I'll grab whatever I can to try to get some calories in my body. Generally, I'll take some gels. So, it's like corn syrup, basically. But the problem with corn syrup or anything that's cooked is that my digestive system doesn't know what to do with it. If I eat any cooked food now after being raw for this many years, I can get really gassy. My body doesn't like cooked food, anything processed. When I was in Leadville a couple of days ago, I had some gels during the race, and I blew up. I had my entire midsection was just like swollen like I was 6 months pregnant because I couldn't digest these processed sugars. And I had so much pain that my heart, I actually had chest pains, like I felt like I was almost having a heart problems because my intestines and everything is getting pushed out, and my heart is actually being like squeezed into my chest from all this gas in my stomach. So Gas X is something that I use in races to alleviate the gas issues from trying to digest foods that I just almost never eat. So it might sound a little strange to some people, but I do have Gas X sometimes to try to alleviate those issues.
Do you take those before you start the race or during the race?
No, I'll carry Gas X with me in case I run out of options. The number one reason why I don't stay 100% raw in races is purely out of logistical issues. It's really hard to get the aid that I need instantly on the course. Because I go into these races, I'm trying to win. I'm trying to win because I want to draw more attention to raw fruits and vegetables. And having a really good crew helps, and I try to carry dates. That's mostly what I like to eat during ultras because it's lightweight, it's high calorie, it's clean, they taste good. But there's logistical issues. In races, they don't have dates at the aid stations. There's not somebody that's going to stand there and literally hand me the bag as I come by. So I carry Gas X, and that's just how I deal with it right now.
What about caffeine?
What about caffeine? Caffeine. Okay, I don't drink coffee. I don't eat cacao or anything that has caffeine in it. I will admit that when I am racing, I will have some Coca-Cola sometimes towards the end of the race. If there's less than 4 hours to the finish line, I will have some caffeine. Caffeine absolutely is a huge stimulant. Everybody's taking it. I kind of rationalize it that way. You know, they're taking caffeine, so I can take caffeine. It has a tremendous effect on pumping me up. If I have half a glass of Coca-Cola or even a half a caffeine pill, sometimes I'll carry a caffeine pill with me. I generally can't go to sleep for almost 24 hours. It's something that bothers me. I struggle with it because ethically I feel like I'm cheating in a lot of ways when I take caffeine. I'm not very proud that I take caffeine sometimes. But I look at the bigger picture. I say to myself, Mike, if you can win or you can place top 3, you're going to drive more positive benefits into showing other people what can be done on fruits and vegetables than if you come in 10th place without the caffeine. Now, I'll never take illegal drugs or anything like that. And caffeine seems pretty harmless, but it does have a huge effect on pushing me through the later stages of a race.
Back to the dates, last night they were mentioning that it seemed like dehydration is an issue. Do you experience that at a point in the race it's just hard to eat dates because it's hard to stay hydrated in there?
Usually late in a race or a long distance run, eating anything is repulsive. You don't want to eat anything. And I like having dates because I literally I bite them into pieces and I swallow them like a pill. I don't even chew it. But of course you need to drink because you need to rehydrate it. Let's talk about some other things. Let's talk about going to the bathroom. Because when you go out for an all-day run, you got to go to the bathroom. And I think going to the bathroom in the woods is pretty natural. I kind of like going to the bathroom outside. I like going to the bathroom outside more than using a regular bathroom. One thing, I'll tell you a funny story. I learned the hard way that I don't use vegetation as toilet paper. Because you really don't know what could be on that vegetation. I've actually gone to the emergency room with a major case of like poison ivy or something like that. Yeah, it was. Oh God, I saw God that day. It was awful. So what I use when I go to the bathroom is I actually look for rocks to use as toilet paper. And a smooth rock is what I would suggest is the best form of toilet paper. It's real simple, kind of sounds weird, but it works out. All right, I got to wrap it up. We're running out of time. Any other questions? And then I think
What was your time the other day?
in Leadville,
Yeah.
17 hours and 56 minutes. It's good.
You think
you
you'll
have any
stop
caffeine?
doing ultras?
What was the question?
Do you have any caffeine at this towards the end?
Yes. The question was, did I have any caffeine towards the end of the race? At mile 88, I was in 4th place, and 3rd place was 15 minutes in front of me, and I did have like a half a cup of Coca-Cola, and it was getting pretty late. It was I think it was about, I'd been running for 16 hours, and I wanted to catch this guy, and he's a very, very good runner. He beat me by I think about 8 minutes. So I made in time into him, but I didn't catch him.
You think you'll ever stop doing ultras?
I don't think I'm ever going to stop doing ultras. I can tell you that ultra running is a state of ultra running is an intense experience. It's absolutely fantastic. I highly, highly recommend people put in the time, put in the effort, put in the suffering to experience that level of fitness. It's a state of existence that's beyond anything that I've ever experienced in my life.
So I think there should be a support group for the spouse.
All right.
Hey, can you mention the baking dates you use for running, and are they cheaper if you compare it to buying a box of dates and then jamming it together by yourself?
Yeah, where I live in New York, there's some ethnic markets where Middle Eastern people, I guess there's also a big Spanish population, and they sell like a brick of baking dates. It's I think it's about 1,000 calories in one. It's like a Ziploc bag basically. It's vacuum sealed, and I buy these things and I carry them as like monster goos or gels, and I'll like bite off one of the corners and I'll just squeeze it into my mouth, and I can run with this thing for like 5-6 hours. It's fantastic, and it costs like $2. So you just gotta have good water supply.
Cool.
What's it?
In your training runs, I know in your racing you don't, when you're training runs, you ever wear compression socks?
I've tried compression socks. I had kind of a bad experience with compression socks though, because most compression socks come up right below the knee, and there's a lot of things connect to the knee. The hamstrings, everything kind of comes down there, and the muscles go into tendons that all wrap around the knee. And I wore compression socks just below my knee, and it created a really negative effect on all that interconnective tissue. And for maybe 2 days after I wore the compression socks, I couldn't walk properly. So
What's the theory behind wearing them?
I think most people, if you have a compression sock on, the muscle's not flopping around. There's less general fatigue. You keep blood from pooling in there too much. I think it's something to try. I haven't had very good experience with compression socks. The best ultra runners in the sport aren't wearing compression socks. I'm sure they've tried them. I don't really see the benefit.
What intensity do you run in your training runs compared to those races?
It depends what I'm training for. If I'm training for a marathon, I do some very high intensity workouts, probably twice a week. If I'm training for a 100-mile race, I generally just run a lot. Ultra running is an endurance sport, and you need to train your mind as much as your body. And just running comfortably, but just getting ready to be out there for a really long time. It's a state of meditation, deep, deep meditation.
Can I ask you what your weight is now?
I think I weigh, right now, I just ran 100 miles. I probably lost about 2 pounds. I think I weigh about 120, maybe 119 and a half right now. My best performances are when I'm about 117, so I'm a little bit overweight right now.
training your upper body?
The only upper body training I do is this all day. You know, just I carry a water bottle. I don't do any upper body. I do push-ups sometimes.
How many?
Pull-ups?
No pull-ups. I do like 50 push-ups, maybe a couple days a week. Maybe I'll just do it just for fun.
Yeah, you look overweight. A little fat.
Why do stomach aches happen, like stomach cramps, and how to get rid of them?
That's a good question. I used to get side stitches, and I think it's a common thing when people first start running. They get these pains in their stomach or even in their shoulders. And I honestly can't tell you if I just don't, that never happens to me anymore because of my fruitarian diet or just because natural adaptations over years and years of running. It's probably a combination of both. But I try to always run on an empty stomach before a race. Just like I talked about body fat being so important and your shoes being light, you don't want to have anything in your stomach. Before I do a race or before I go on a big run, if I want to perform well, I try to stop eating all solid food about 12 hours before I go out. And it makes a huge difference. I mean, weight is weight, whether it's, fiber in your stomach, whether it's, extra rubber on your shoes or body fat or even clothing.
So 12 hours before, what are you?
12 hours before a big race, I maybe just some orange juice. If I don't have a juicer, I'll just chew the orange in my mouth and spit out the pulp. I'll eat some dates because it's a lot of high calories, not a lot of mass. One more question.
Just a quick one, Mike. So for those in that kind of phase one, building up the physical stamina and endurance, is there any specific resources that you recommend for people beginning that process, building up that, or is it just adding on more miles to what they're doing now?
I would say if you want to develop into an ultra runner, then physical being the first goal to tackle is to go out and run slow, take walking breaks. Don't push yourself too hard. You don't want to be in a position where you finish the run and the next day you can't run again. You got to have a lot of patience. You want to build yourself up to a level incrementally. You don't want to break yourself down. So go slow. There's lots of books. There's stuff online. It's real simple. That's what's so great about ultra running. It's you and nothing else. It's a sport of one. Nobody can push you across that finish line. You can't coast ever in running. So just get a good pair of shoes, get out there, run, and just keep running. And then run until you can't run anymore, until your body just shuts down, and then let your mind take over, and let your mind push you even further. And then your mind's going to just reject everything and say, no way, and then your heart takes over. And that's it's your emotional state. Just takes you so far beyond what your limits are. And when those things come together, it's a spiritual experience. And one thing I want to say, when I was in Leadville, the race director who created the race, the Leadville 100, he's a special guy. He's got a lot of heart. And he said something to me last year. He said it to everybody that really sticks with me. He says to all the runners before they get out there, the day before at the race meeting, he says, you're better than you think you are. You can do more than you think you can. And to just internalize that. A lot of us have false egos, and we think, oh, we can do anything. But I think when it comes down to it, there's a lot of self-doubt in what you think your limitations are. And you need to have faith that you really can go so far and above and beyond what your perceived limitations are. And to actually achieve that, to go so much further than what your own self-consciousness believes is incredible. I go for these monster runs, and my body just can do it. And it's amazing. It's absolutely amazing. It's the realest thing that I've ever experienced in my life. There's nothing better. Money and fame, fortune, it doesn't even compare. So I hope that gives some inspiration to you guys, and that's really what I want to share with you. This lecture is going to be a part 2 from my lecture from last year on ultra running. I apologize to some of you who probably haven't seen that lecture, but just because there's so much to talk about in ultra running, and I want to try to get it recorded and documented for YouTube so other people can see it, I'm going to be talking about things that I didn't talk about in my first lecture. So if you're watching this lecture for the first time, you should go back and see the first lecture that I gave last year at the Woodstock Fruit Festival, and that'll cover different things than what I'm going to cover here. So if you have questions about things that I'm not going to talk about during this lecture, I'm happy to talk to you afterwards, and I can answer more specific questions. My first lecture, I talked about kind of the macro components to ultra running. I talked about what my definition of ultra running was. I talked about some training principles. In this specific lecture, I'm going to be talking about unique ancillary things that go into ultra running. I've got a number of things on the stage here that I'm going to talk about, and these devices and some of these principles that I'm going to cover help me become the kind of ultra runner that I am today. So I'm going to be going through a litany of different things that I use in how I train or how I recover in the sport. And I think they're all useful things that you should know about. The first thing I'm going to talk about, in no particular order, is something that's a new product that's on the ultra running scene, but I think it's something very good, especially for beginner ultra runners to use. And that are these shoes. Now, these are very unusual looking shoes. I think when I was growing up in the late 80s, early 90s, when I used to go to like dance clubs, there were these really crazy high platform shoes, and these are kind of the next generation. These are called Hoka 1-1 running shoes. A lot of you might look at these like I did when I first saw them, and I kind of thought they were ridiculous and say, well, you know, these things look like they're super heavy, they look like they're dangerous to wear. And I'll tell you about my experience with these. These are obviously have a tremendous amount of cushioning. But if you look at the profile of the shoe, the actual footbed doesn't drop from the heel to the toe very much. There's only about a 4 millimeter drop. So they're trying to mimic a type of barefoot position when your foot hits the ground where there's not a high arch. These things have been extremely beneficial for me in the very long distance runs, especially on trails, especially where there's lots of downhills. When you're going to run for 12, 15, 24 hours, your feet become a very big issue. You want cushioning. These give you tremendous cushioning. They're running downhill in these is like stepping on wet sponges. And they are heavier than, let's say, a racing flat like these. But in the really long distances, your feet become kind of the limiting factor in how far you can go. When I ran this race, Badwater, it's 135 miles, my muscles really never gave me a problem. It was my feet, just all the pounding. So I'd recommend, if you're serious about getting into the ultra distance, say over 50 miles, anything more than 10 hours, I would recommend these. I really would. They're very expensive. I'm not happy about that. I think it's kind of a ripoff. They cost anywhere from like $120 to $180, about twice as much as a regular running shoe, but they probably last twice as long, if not longer, than a regular running shoe. So I think it's a good investment. I just ran the Leadville 100 utilizing these, and running downhill after I've been running for 15 hours, putting these on has been amazing. If you're a competitive ultra runner like I am, I would say these are too heavy to use in any flat distances or in any short distances. So what I've been doing now in the longer runs, like in the 100-mile runs, is I actually transition to these shoes. In the last couple long distance races that I run, I've carried a shoehorn, and I put on a hydration pack, and I actually run with these shoes. So if I get to the top of a big climb, or I'm going to be away from an aid station for a long period of time, and I've got a long downhill, and it's late in the race, I got a shoehorn, and I switch it up, and I put on these shoes. And I know I'm giving these people a big pump up. I'm not sponsored by them. I'm not happy about what they're charging for these shoes. I think they could be doing a much better service to the community and probably for their own bottom lines if they lower their prices and went on volume. But the Hoka 1-1s are really a game changer. I think these are going to be standard issue for most ultra runners in the future. So I am recommending them. One thing I would be careful about, they are dangerous if you're going to run downhill because your foot is so high off the ground. You can break your ankle quite easily with these. It's a very, very wide shoe, so although the risk is there, I haven't had any real issues with rolling my ankle too much. So I recommend these. Next thing I'm going to talk about, which is kind of unusual, and I don't think most ultra runners have seen anybody running with this, is a back brace. There's a lot of physics that go into the sport of running, and the more you run, the more pressure and weight you have on your lower back. And a lot of people's form really fall apart when they've been running for a really long time. They start to lean forward, they start to lean to the side, their back isn't straight, and you want to keep as much weight on your skeletal system as possible. That's extremely important. Your form is more important when you're tired than when you're fresh. So in Badwater, 135 miles, the longest I ever ran before, my lower back didn't bother me at all, which is incredible. 31 hours moving, and my lower back was fine. I had this really good strap, really good. This was about $25 on like a back support website. It's basically used for people that move boxes, and it keeps your whole intestines and your whole stomach, your midsection, just relaxed. So if you're somebody who's just trying to start out past the marathon distance, and you're going to go out for a 4-hour run, and you're just trying to get your body adapted to the stress and strain, I would definitely get one of these lower back supports. They really, really help. And if you put it on and you can adjust it and make it feel really good around your waist, when you take it off when you're done with your run, you can feel it's like somebody just put a box on your shoulders. So I don't want to say I'm the first, but I haven't seen anybody else using these in races. I just ran Leadville with this. 19 hours of running, and my lower back felt really solid the whole time. This is a game changer. Highly, highly recommend lower back support. Next thing I'm going to talk about is massage. You hear about all these pro athletes, they go to these training centers and they get a massage every day. They get stretched out. And they got somebody working on them, right? They got somebody working with their hands, right? And it's something that I've tested. I've gone to a massage center and paid for 2 weeks of massage every day for 90 minutes. And I went there running every day 30 miles. So I would run to work for 15 miles, get a massage for 90 minutes on my lower legs, and then run home. And I did it every day for 2 weeks with hand massage. And because I really wanted to test what are Olympic athletes, what kind of benefits are they getting from daily massage? Am I going to be super, super fresh after 2 weeks of getting a massage every day? And the answer is I've gotten much better results with this kind of device than with somebody's hands. Now, it's nice to get touched by somebody. It feels good. But we're talking about like the real principles of circulating blood through the muscles, stretching out the muscle fibers, and just getting relaxed. This type of device, an electronic massage tool, is way more beneficial. It's way more effective. So I think massage is good, but I think getting a hand massage is kind of a waste of money. It usually costs like $100 for a 90-minute massage, and one of these costs like $100. And this is going to give you way more penetration. You're going to be able to use it a lot more. It's going to be way more beneficial. So when I'm beat up and I want to kind of recover quickly, I use one of these, and they're really good. Hand massages are nice, but it's really not as effective as something like this. Another thing that a lot of people run into in ultra running is they have issues with their IT band. There's one device that can solve that problem, and that's this, a foam roller for an IT band. I think it's important if you're going to try to run a lot, you got to be doing preventative measures. And rolling on a foam roller, I do this. I try to roll on this, a couple times a week. It just takes a few minutes, and it just never lets this IT band, which connects from your hip flexor down to your knee. This band, it's really important. It usually acts up for a lot of people when they start doing high mileage. So I'd recommend the foam roller. I'll just demonstrate how you use it. You just put it down, and you kind of just lay on it, and you just roll, just stretch. It just stretches out your IT band. That's it. You just go like this, back and forth a couple times.
And then you cry.
If you have a tight IT band, this can be extremely, extremely painful. But I'm telling you right now, if you're going to be a good ultra runner, if you're really going to make ultra running your sport, you have to run high mileage. And just about everybody I know that starts to run high mileage, one of the first things that they have problems with is their IT band gets tight. So this is standard issue. It's like $10 or $15. You've got to stretch your IT bands. Anytime I run more than 180 miles a week, my IT band is just, it's super tight, can't fully extend my knee, and it's a big problem. Very important. Another thing that, Another thing that's really important in recovery is an ultrasound. I'm sure people have gone to a physical therapist before. You go to a physical therapist, there's usually 3 things that they're helping you with. They're either going to teach you how to stretch and use you try to correct imbalances and give you like weight training to try to correct imbalances in different muscular problems you're having. And the number one thing that they're using it at a PT office is an ultrasound. This one type of machine, this one type of technology, it sends some kind of radio waves, or it's like a massage at a cellular level. And you're not supposed to be able to buy one of these things for home use unless you're a personal trainer. If you go on eBay, there's tons of them that are used. This one's from like the 1980s, and it still works fine. I think I paid $300 for it, and when I bought it, I was supposed to be a physical therapist, and I just paid them, and they just shipped it to me. And I think that's, they put up these legal notices that you have to be a medical doctor or therapist in order to buy one of these, but it's not enforced. If I've got tight muscles, if I've got inflammation, if I've got pain, if I've got any kind of muscle tear, if I turn this on and I just use it for 5 minutes twice a day, I'm getting the benefit of a $200 visit to the physical therapist office. And it heals stuff fast. This thing is indispensable. I mean, I tell everybody I haven't been injured once since I became a Fruitarian. I also started using this machine anytime I had problems around the same time I started changing my diet. So I definitely think a fruit-based diet keeps me injury-free, but anytime I got any kind of problems, plantar fasciitis, tight hamstrings, knee pain, I fire this thing on, use it 5 minutes a day, and it's good. So I highly recommend, if you're going to be in the sport long-term, spend a few $100 on an ultrasound. They come a lot smaller now. This one's from the 1980s. I know the new ultrasounds are the size of like a banana, some of them. They're really small, and they're just as powerful. It's a great device. Can't recommend it highly enough.
Mark, with the ultrasound, do they use a gel, very specific gel, or can you just use something else?
Yeah, that's a good question. He's asking me if you need, what kind of gel you can use for the ultrasound. And I used to buy like aloe vera gel. It was kind of expensive. It gets kind of sticky. It gooks up all over the thing. And now the thing I like to use that I think works best is baby powder. Basically, you want the surface to be either really wet and moist with gel, or super, super dry. And if you put some baby powder on, it's a lot less expensive, and it doesn't make a mess. When you put the ultrasound on, it works. You can feel the vibration coming all the way through. If I put it on my quad here and I put my hand on the other side of my leg, my fingers are tingling. The waves are just going all the way through everything. And the reason I brought this here is because we can plug it in and you guys can try it out. If you're a serious runner and you plan on being in the sport for a long time, you're always going to have aches and pains and issues. Don't let them turn into injuries. Buy an ultrasound. There's an entire industry that exists around this type of technology and this type of equipment. And for a few $100, there's no reason why everybody shouldn't have one of these house. It's like, consider it like a hair dryer. Okay? You need this. It's a secret, and I'm letting you know you need one. Next thing. LLLT. It's low-level laser therapy. If the ultrasound isn't helping me out on some things, this is kind of a controversial technology. It's I can't necessarily explain how this works properly. You should look it up on the internet. It's LLLT, low-level laser therapy. What this is it's a laser that has like full spectrum. It's the way it was described to me. It's like putting the sun and all the rays, like right wherever your issue is. So if I've got inflammation, usually this is really good for inflammation or acute pain. If I've had plantar fasciitis issues where I've got pain in my lower foot, or if I got some swelling in my knee, and the ultrasound isn't working that well, this thing can be indispensable. This is from Vitro Laser, and it says avoid contact with eyes, and it's for animal use only. This is made for horses. Because this is also a physical therapist tool that supposed to be a doctor or a medical physician in order to buy one of these things. So I bought one from a veterinarian for my horse. Okay. I had, after I finished Badwater, I had acute issues with my IT band, just where it connected to my knee. This area was just really inflamed. It was swollen, it was painful. I could still run on it, but it just wouldn't go away. I kept using the ultrasound. I iced it, and it just wouldn't. So the inflammation was just there for like almost 2 weeks. I kind of forgot about this thing. It was kind of buried in one of my drawers. I put it on. In 2 days, it's like Star Trek. In Star Trek, you guys ever watch Star Trek? And the guy's injured, and they just take some wands and they put some lights on the guy, and it's just cured. If anybody's got acute pain, arthritis, some inflammation or anything, you should try this. If I had plantar fasciitis problems, and you can literally, it's just light. You put it on the area and just move it around, and you can feel a tingling sensation, and the pain goes away. Just for a few minutes. It sounds totally crazy, but it works. There's real technology behind this. You can read up about the specifics on it online.
Does the pain stay away for like seconds or minutes or hours or days or forever or?
When I use this, if I had, I had this problem with inflammation, pain on my IT band where it connects to my knee, I put it on there for about 5 minutes, and the pain went away, and within 15 minutes the swelling went down. Wow. So it has, I guess, similar effects to like icing. It kind of numbs the area. Apparently, the laser spectrum, the light, is so intense, it moves the cellular something. The cells just start moving faster. It increases the circulation, and it's not some pie in the sky. This thing really is incredible. So I'd recommend this highly.
To use it, do you just massage?
Yeah, you just move it over the area. It's amazing. LLLT. It's very popular in physical therapist's office.
So do you even need an ultrasound if you have that?
The question was, do I need an ultrasound if I have this? Well, they both cost a few $100. I think I paid like $400 for just this flashlight. But it's for some reason, and I don't know the science behind it, sometimes the ultrasound usually cures or helps me with 90% of whatever I need. This thing maybe does something a little bit different. The ultrasound wouldn't help my knee. This thing did. So between the two of them, it works. And also, what's great, if you're going to be in a race, you can't really run around with an ultrasound. And I kind of take this with me if I'm having like some acute pain in my foot or something. I've used this in races, especially on track races, and it's helped.
Good against cramps.
Excuse me?
Muscle cramps.
Yeah, muscle cramps. But I would say if the number one thing you want to bring to a race if you're having muscle cramps is one of these. You can plug it into your car at an aid station. You can leave it, in one of your drop bags if there's going to be power somewhere. At most aid stations, they have generators. If you've got tight hamstrings or tight muscles in a race, and you put one of these on high speed and you put it on there, it's like getting an hour massage in 5 minutes. It's moving so fast. And again, I'm talking about all kinds of devices and knickknacks. In my first lecture that's on YouTube, I'm talking about the ultra running and what it is to become an ultra runner. So I wanted to make a complete series, and that's why I'm talking about all these things that aren't really talking about running too much. The next thing I'm going to talk about is an EMS. This is electrical muscle stimulation. This device, you put electrode pads on your muscles. I use this on my quadriceps. And this sends an electrical current through your muscles to engage your muscles in contracting.
Is that the same thing as a TENS unit? Or similar to a TENS unit?
I'm not sure what a TENS unit is. Sorry. So, why do I use this device? Well, I run a lot, and I almost wish I could run more. And putting on this device on my quadriceps creates another workout. I sit at a desk job all day. Most people sit at a desk job all day, or they sit at a computer. And if you can't run as much as you want to, this is a fantastic device to get a second workout or a third workout in without having to work out. I brought it here so after the lecture you guys can put it on and we can demonstrate your muscles contracting without you actually doing it yourself. This is an indispensable device if you're going to be running in a really hilly environment where your quadriceps are going to be getting beat up a lot, either running downhill or uphill. Turning this on and using it for an hour a day really strengthened my muscle endurance. So I want to say electrical muscle stimulation, I'm not so, it looks like I'm really into gadgets. I kind of like the purity of running, but this stuff really works. If you can't run twice a day, run in the morning, and then when you're sitting at your desk at work, put this on and try it out. It's really fantastic, especially for downhill running. After I used this for a couple weeks before I got to a mountain race, my quadriceps are just indestructible. They just become like beef jerky. So I highly recommend that. Electrical muscle stimulators, there's lots of different companies that sell them. Again, on eBay used, I think you could probably get it for about $150 to $200. New, they're like $500. There's lots of different settings on the units. They have endurance settings, or for strength training, or for there's lots of different settings for different sports. But I would say just use it on the endurance mode. And one thing that's good about the EMS is they actually have a mode called recovery mode, and it just it massages the muscle. It pulses it slowly and it circulates the blood. So at times when I've been really sore after a race and I can't run, but I want to kind of circulate the blood through the muscles, you can put on the EMS unit and you can kind of just circulate everything through. So I'd highly recommend that also as a recovery tool.
Oh, hi, Mike. The lecture's about ultra running, but with these three devices, would any of them be appropriate for someone who's sort of elderly and not in very good shape and just sort of like wants to get back into some exercise?
The question is, would any of these devices be good for somebody who's not necessarily into running, or they're an elderly person? Most of the devices that I'm talking about here are for kind of prevention or recovery from injury. And when you run a lot, you can have those issues. So it applies to anybody in any sport at any age. So yes. Next thing I'm going to talk about is the stationary bicycle right here. What's different about this bicycle is that it has very unusual cranks on the pedals. Now, the mechanics of running are about running in a circular motion. Most people, when they think about running, they're thinking about pushing off, because that's forward motion. But the limiting factor in pushing off is how fast can you get your foot back on the ground. The faster you can get your foot back on the ground, you're going to have higher RPMs and you're going to be able to run faster. So this device, the sole purpose of this device is to train you to how to improve your RPMs, or getting your running motion, your mechanics to be very efficient. So if you can see this crank, see when I turn this crank, the one on the other side is totally independent. So I'm going to do a demonstration for you. This is called a power crank. They're independent cranks, and what it does is it forces you to learn how to run in a circular motion independently. It strengthens your hip flexors and your hamstrings and your glutes primarily. And most people have very weak hamstrings and very weak glutes. Getting really strong hamstrings has been, I'd say, a very important part of my success, both in having limiting injuries and also being able to run really quickly. This device has helped me tremendously. It's quite expensive. Power cranks cost anywhere from $300 to $500 used. They're bulletproof. They'll last forever, so it's a one-time investment. And if you train on this as a supplement to your running, you will be able to run uphill faster. You'll be able to run faster just across the board. There's something called an Alter G treadmill, and that's used by Olympic athletes. And what it is a treadmill that has an airbag that goes around your waist, and they pressurize this area that's below your waist when you're running on a treadmill. And what it does is it takes weight off of your legs. And in these elite athletes that can spend, that have like these $100,000 treadmills, it mimics the same principle of what we're trying to do here. We're trying to take the weight off the legs so we can run and try to cycle faster. So we can engage the hip flexors and the hamstrings to become very, very strong. This device is a bicycle, but it does more for your running than anything else. And I also brought this here so you guys could try it out afterwards. This is if there's any piece of equipment that I could recommend to learn how to run faster, it's this. So, see, I can ride just with one foot. You have to pull in the full cycle. If you get on this and you ride this bike for 5 minutes, you'll be exhausted. Your hamstrings have never worked hard. I mean, pulling up in every single stroke. So the goal here is, for most people, is to be able to learn how to run faster. If you're on a track and you're trying to run a mile, let's say in 5 minutes, for somebody my height, I'm going to be running at about 95 RPMs. If I get on this bike and I start pedaling, I can pedal at 110 RPMs. That's like doing a 4:15 mile, engaging those muscles at that speed. And if you train at that speed, if you can train for 30 minutes at 4 minutes and 30 seconds per mile pace, you're going to run really fast when you get off this bike. Before I got this, I never really had hip flexors. After riding on this for a while, I grew, almost like another part of my body grew out of the side of my hip. And it's incredible. So specifically for running fast, if you're interested in running a fast marathon and you don't want to go to the track, this is an incredible device. Can't recommend this highly enough. This is the only reason I broke a 2 hour and 30 minute marathon was because I had this. This is just incredible. So again, we can use this afterwards. It really uses your whole lower body. It's incredible. Most people that get on this can't even cycle in a circle because they haven't learned how to use those muscles before. So this is an incredible piece of equipment. I keep saying it over and over again. If you want to run really fast and get really strong hamstrings, this is the best.
And you also recommend putting them on your bike, right? On your road bike.
Yeah, you can put the power cranks on your road bike, but road biking is extremely dangerous, and I don't recommend it. I'd stay indoors. No one's going to hurt you or run you over, so it's better on this. Next thing I talked about briefly in one of my lectures, my first lecture, was sleep. Sleep is a critical component to running. And I brought this, I know this seems a little strange, I brought this face mask here today. Because this device, this singular piece of foam and plastic has changed my life. I know it sounds totally crazy, but if you have no light whatsoever entering your brain through your eyeballs, through your eyelids, you can sleep deeper and longer. And all of us at this day and age, probably everybody here goes to bed too late, and they can't sleep in on the weekends. Maybe once everybody's sensitive to light, and as soon as light hits your eyeballs, you're naturally going to wake up. This one mask, it's made by Mindfold. It's got a piece of plastic on the front. It's got foam on the back. When you wear this, it's pitch black. I can go outside in the middle of the day, noon, put this on, look up at the sun, and you can't see anything. It's total darkness. So this has allowed me to sleep a lot better, deeper, and a lot longer. And that's been a huge part of my success as a runner. So I can't recommend getting a sleep mask like this enough. It's $5 and it's fantastic. Let's see, what am I talking about next? All right, next thing I'm going to talk about is there's a device called a bone stimulator. A lot of people that run too much sometimes tend to have issues with fractures, bone fractures. Most of the time when you get a stress fracture, you go to a physical therapist or to, they take an MRI and your doctor says, well, get on the crutches and just stay off your leg or whatever for, 6 weeks. I don't know why, but they don't recommend something called a bone stimulator. It's a medical device that you do have to get from a doctor. You can sometimes buy them used on eBay, but if you have a stress fracture, a bone stimulator will cure it extremely, extremely fast. And I just want to throw that out there. That's very important. Next thing I'm going to talk about is underwear. Now this is only going to be for the guys in the room, okay? I'm not sponsored by any companies. I've had offers to be sponsored. I'm really not interested in getting sponsored. I kind of like being able to do my own thing and promote products that I believe in just based on what they can do. About 6 months ago, a company got in touch with me through my running club and said, hey, we want to send you some underwear to try out. And I figured, okay, well, sure, I'll take some free underwear. And they sent me this, and it looks like it's just kind of a pair of running shorts or tights. And I'll pass these around. These are brand new, by the way. They're made by a company called Frigos, and what it is inside is it's got a built-in jock strap, and it's got kind of a thing to put your stuff in, and it works out. It's really, really good. I ran the Badwater 135-mile race, this race, and then 3 days later I ran the Vermont 100. So I ran 235 miles in 5.5 days in one pair of underwear like this, and I had absolutely zero chafing, like anywhere downstairs. And these things were just incredible. So I brought them so you can kind of check them out. They're pretty interesting. It's definitely for the guys. And I highly recommend these things. It's incredible.
Where are those things available from?
It's the name of the company is Frigos. It's let's see, how do you spell it? Frigo. You just do a Google search. Frigos. And actually, the guy that sent them to me for the demo, he said if you put in my last name Arnstein, you get a 40% discount. So there you go, 40% off.
You buy from that company specifically?
Yeah, it's the company that makes it. And they're advertising now in Ultra Running magazine, so they're targeting the ultra running male community.
Is that presumably they produce a range of different underwear? Is that specific one? Because I've never had chafing before, but since I've started doing like marathon and longer distances, I am getting chafing now.
Yeah, chafing is a game stopper in ultra running. If you're going to go out and run in a race for 10 hours, you get salt and you get just grime, you get dirt. Anything that's moving, rubbing next to each other can just end your experience right there. Yeah, so they sell multiple different lengths and stuff like that, but this has been amazing. It's kind of like for women, could you imagine running without a bra on? Or if a really loose bra and it was just rubbing you all over the place and your back. It's the same principle for the guys downstairs. This is just incredible stuff.
So no, you wouldn't wear it. Jogging briefs underneath that.
Yeah, well, these are supposed to be underwear. You're supposed to wear something over these, but they're, I think you could wear them as just running in your underwear. All right, next thing I want to talk about is another recovery technique that I've had good experience with is ice baths. If you're going to try to be really competitive and you want to train at a high level one time in your life, and you're going to make ultra running your priority, you should seriously consider doing ice baths. A lot of times I come home in the past. I've come home from a double, and I've got my legs are just really swollen with blood. If you can sit in the tub, it's a religious experience. You will see God. It's ice baths really do work, and it's something really effective in helping you recover very quickly. So that's something I think is important to mention.
Sorry, Mike, how long do you stay in the ice bath for?
I get in the ice bath. It's a good question. How long do I stay in the ice bath for? When you get in an ice bath, you want to put on a hat and a jacket, because if you can get hot before you go in, and you keep your upper body warm, even if your lower body's freezing, you're generally going to be a lot more comfortable. And I stay in for 20 to 30 minutes. You go in there with a magazine, and just when you get out of the ice bath, you got to be really careful because you have very little blood in your muscles, and you could tear something or pull something. You're brittle, so you got to warm up slowly.
Do you try and keep the water level below your kidneys, or do you just run it up quite high?
Yeah, the water level I usually leave just waist height. All right, let's see. Another thing that has been very effective for going back to sleep. I eat a fruitarian diet, and I don't take supplements outside of B12. But one thing I have taken to help me go to sleep at night, which I find has been very effective, is melatonin. I'm sure you've all heard of it. It has been something that I've used trying to reset my body clock to before I go to sleep at night, before a big race. I've had success with it. So just throwing that out there, I do use melatonin before races. It helps me go to sleep, and it's been effective.
Mark, a bit more on the melatonin, please. Do you use it occasionally or regularly? Is there a potential for it not to be addictive, but you'd like brain just to get used to this external source?
Yeah, the question is, do I use melatonin on a regular basis? The answer is no. I almost never ever use it. I only use it usually a couple nights or 1 or 2 nights before a big race. It gives me a really deep sleep when I use it once in a while. I think if I use it all the time, it wouldn't do anything for me.
And how many hours do you take it before you go to bed?
I usually take it about 20, 30 minutes before I go to bed, and within an hour I can feel something in my brain is putting me to sleep. It's not like a sleeping pill. It's like, I release some type of something in my brain. Some gland releases something that puts me in a deep sleep. Maybe it's part psychological, but I'm just throwing it out there. I do use melatonin before races or leading up to a race to give myself, a really deep sleep at night.
And what dosage, if you can remember?
2 to 3 milligrams. Another thing I'm going to talk about in races, a lot of times people run into problems with muscle cramps. A lot of times they're running an ultra, you're going to be running when it's dark out. And no matter what time of year at night, it's going to get cooler out. One thing I use is these throwaway like heating pads. These things have been indispensable for me. I ran a race in Arizona last year. It was a 100-mile race on the track. And it wasn't cold, but it was, it got into I think it was in the low 60s. It was a little cool. And I had some problems with my IT band. Took some of these, they get hot, and I wrapped an ace bandage around my leg, kept the whole area super warm, and didn't have any problems with my IT bands because of these things. This is saved the day, and I won the race. And I know if I didn't have these, dollar throwaway heating pads, I wouldn't have finished. So this is portable heat. This is really important if you're going to be out late at night in a cold environment. I would carry a couple of these things with an ace bandage. If your legs get cold, your muscles get cold after you've been on them for a really long time, they're just going to turn into posts. And this is an incredible, very simple, low-cost device. Another thing I brought was a headlamp. Ultra running usually requires you to run at night. And at night, if you're going to be running for a long period of time and you have a traditional flashlight or headlamp that puts a circle on the ground, you can start seeing things that aren't there. If you're looking at a circle on the ground for hour after hour, it can drive you crazy. This type of headlamp, it's made by Black Diamond. It's got kind of a serrated, type of plastic over the light, and it makes a diffused light. There's no circle anywhere. And if you're really going to be an ultra runner, run at night, you cannot run with a circle on the ground. It's Chinese water torture. It'll drive you crazy. So a diffused light that's ambient, there's no circles, is very important. I brought the headlamp. You can test it out later if you're interested. What's that?
What is it?
It's made by Black Diamond, and I think it's their most expensive model. It's got a rechargeable battery pack in the back. It's very bright. I don't see a model number on it, but I think it was like $80. And they specify specifically that it's a diffused light in the description. Yep. Next thing I talk about is gaiters. Rocks in your shoes can be so goddamn annoying. You just want to go crazy. So this is made by Mountain Hardware. They're really lightweight, and you buy some webbing, some type of strong string, and you can string these up. I highly recommend if you're going to do anything on the trails, do yourself a favor. You don't want rocks in your shoes. When you're in a race and you can't bend down to untie your shoes to take rocks out, you're just really tired. It's safety first in my mind. I always try to run with gaiters because it just avoids the whole dirt in your shoes and rock problems. If you've got to take your shoes off sometime during the race, it could happen. It's a pain in the neck, but I definitely recommend gaiters. Something really important. Okay. One thing I want to talk about is water bottles. They're handheld bottles versus a Camelback versus a hydration back. I'm a lot of people you see running with water packs, and I think you're going to be much better off holding handheld bottles. You're going to drink more with bottles than with having to take a straw that's, flopping around or something like that. Also, bottles are crash pads if you fall down. Also, if it's hot out, the water bottles could be a little cold. They'll keep your hands from getting too swollen. I thought it's also better weight distribution when you're running to have the bottles kind of as an upper body form of exercise than just more weight on your legs. To kind of you have more distribution by having it out on your hands. And it's easier to open and fill water bottles than it is to take a hydration pack off. And you don't get chafing with the hydration backpack. So I'm a big proponent of water bottles instead of hydration packs. So I think it's something good to use in training to get used to. Let's see.
You do get chafing with hydration.
Yeah. Okay, any questions so far?
The watch? The watch?
Oh, well, my watch. Well, I've talked about this in my other lecture. I run with a GPS watch. It's an indispensable piece of equipment. I can't run without it. It's my best friend. I have the 310 XT by Garmin, and the battery lasts for 18 hours, which generally gets you through a pretty long run. There's also a device that you can buy from Duracell to recharge the battery as you're running. So in the Badwater race, I ran for 31 hours on the same watch, and I just recharged it as I was running with a mobile charger. So I'd highly recommend a GPS watch. It helps you just stay motivated. It'll help you run longer because you always want round numbers. If you ran for 18 miles, you're probably just going to keep going to hit 20 just because you want the watch and you to be in sync. So I recommend the GPS watch. All right, so now what you guys have been waiting for, a good surprise, Injigny makes, they make some really cool hats, but I'm pretty sure I talked about this in my other lecture, but Injigny socks it's basically like a condom for each one of your toes. And it's safety first because, let me tell you, blisters are just awful. They're the worst thing ever. And since I started wearing Injigny socks, I've never had blisters. 235 miles in 5.5 days, no blisters on my toes. I was running these socks. It's a standard issue. It's like, I can't run without them. Injigny gave us a bunch of things to give away. I don't know if I have enough for everybody, but we'll give these out after the lecture. I want to say thanks to Injigny for supporting this event, and I'd say that if you don't run Injigny socks, you're just not being smart.
Do you change the socks during the race?
Yeah, wearing Injigny socks, I never change my socks during a race because I never have toe problems, never. And also, I believe that the material that goes in between your toes stretches them out just slightly, and I think that slight stretch of the space between your toes helps with foot problems like plantar fasciitis and foot cramping. I've never had really a foot problem since I started running in these. So this is incredible product. Really fantastic. All right.
Sometimes it takes a while to get used to it.
EMS bike. And then a couple things I wanted to say about some of the principles in racing. I would say that if you're going to do ultra running as a serious sport, you should seriously consider picking races that are destinations. If you go somewhere as a race for a vacation rather than like in your local community, it really just brings a whole nother world into the event for you. I recently went out to a race outside of San Francisco called the Miwok 100K, and it was just a wonderful experience traveling to a beautiful city, a beautiful neighborhood, beautiful area of the country, and just not just running, but just experiencing something different, a new place. So I really encourage you to if you're going to take up ultra running, if you're going to pick a race, do it in a beautiful place, in a beautiful environment, and it just makes it that much more special. California is fantastic. I love mountainous areas, and that's something that I think you should look into too. Let's see, we got about 5 more minutes. Does anybody have any questions? Dennis?
Do you try any compression sleeves? What do you think about that?
Yes, a question about compression socks or sleeves. I have run in them. I can't say that I've really experienced any benefit running in compression socks. I know people like Paula Radcliffe. She's the best female marathoner of all time. She runs in compression socks. I think it's something to try. For me personally, I haven't really experienced any benefit using them, but I know they do work for some people. Yep.
Mike, you mentioned the number one problem is for ultra runners is the ITB. A lot of runners tend to have Achilles tendon problems as well. I'm just wondering if you know of any magic trick that might be able to help with that.
All right, so the question is, a lot of runners have problems with their Achilles tendonitis, Achilles tendon, IT bands. One piece of equipment that I really wanted to bring here today that I didn't, and I'm glad you reminded me to talk about it, is something called a VersaFlex. The reason I didn't bring it is because it's a big, heavy piece of equipment. I'll try to demonstrate what it is. Basically, it's a stretching device, and they use it for martial arts. Again, it's called a VersaFlex stretching machine. You can just go on Google and search for it, and you'll see it. It's a device that you would sit on, and I'll try to imagine if I was sitting like this, and I was sitting on a seat with 2 boards going out over my feet. And in the center here is like a winch device. And every time you push it down, it just stretches your legs a little bit more. And it's like a 16th century, torture device. I mean, and this thing can go to 180 degrees. And I've gotten it to like 110 before I start to cry. Right? And then what it has is it's got these posts, these holders by your feet in the center and posts over here. So what you do is you hold on to this post and you pull yourself forward. You pull yourself forward over here. And using this device, it stretches out the entire leg. When you use a VersaFlex, I think they're like $150. Again, indispensable piece of equipment. If you don't have tight hamstrings using this device, you don't have knee problems because your hamstrings connect to the knees, and all that connects to your lower leg. So it's all about stretching. If you have an Achilles tendonitis, any knee problems, you got to stretch your hamstrings.
What about the boots?
I had a problem with my hip for about 1.5 years. This is like 6 years ago. And I went to all these orthopedics. I got an MRI, and I said, I got a problem, I think maybe I need surgery. And I went to all these doctors, and they sent me to a physical therapist's office to use the ultrasound. And just for 1.5 years, I couldn't get rid of this hip problem. And I went to one orthopedic, and he said, listen, he said, you got to get this thing called a VersaFlex, and you just got to stretch your hamstrings. He's like, if you stretch your hamstrings, you're not going to have any problems with your lower back, with your knees, with your lower leg. And I spent like $250 in this VersaFlex stretcher, and I got on for 15 minutes every day. And in a week, after 1.5 years of hip pain, it was gone. So I talked about the power cranks being indispensable and all this other piece of equipment. A VersaFlex stretcher, just incredible, incredible device.
I hear that. Will it make any difference to an Achilles though?
Yes. When you sit on this thing, it stretches out everything in your whole. You're stretching out your plantar fasciitis, the band in your foot, because you're just every part of the back of your leg is just stretched out. It's amazing, amazing.
What about the boot that they do with?
For plantar fasciitis, it's a very common also issue with a lot of ultra runners. There's a band underneath the arch of your foot. A lot of times that gets stressed out for people when they run too much. There's something called a plantar fasciitis boot. I think if you type in plantar fasciitis and stretching boot, you'll see there's a device. It's basically a splint, and it forces you to stretch your foot out like this, and put it on at night before you go to sleep. And you just keep your foot at a 90-degree angle, and any issues you have with plantar fasciitis will be gone in a few days. Just a light stretch. It's just keeping your foot at a 90-degree angle when you go to sleep. It's mindless, it's easy, you just put it on, go to bed, and in a few days you don't have plantar fasciitis anymore. Another thing that most orthopedic or physical therapists just don't recommend. Because they want you to keep coming back for treatment. They want to make money on you, For $20 you get the stretching boot, and it's really good. All right, again, I apologize for not talking more about specific run training and stuff like that. I wanted to cover all these types of devices, so I had a kind of a full-rounded lecture series on YouTube. Is there any other questions?
Do you think running with bottles versus backpack can help you have a better running stride or keep your hands on?
The question is, do you think it's better to run with the backpack instead of the bottle?
A lot of people have their hands right here when they're running, but having the bottles is going to force you to have your hands low.
Yeah, that's a good point. Harley pointed out, when you run with water bottles, your hands aren't going to be swinging out too far. You're going to keep your center of gravity more centered, and I think it's good to if you're not going to be running fast. If you want to run fast, you got to have your arms out, obviously. But if you're going to run slow, having the water bottles close to center of gravity, and it's kind of a pendulum. They keep them kind of swinging better. So I think, does that answer your question? You're just trying to make a point? Yeah. Anybody else? One thing I brought to kind of get you all motivated. I just got here from Leadville. When you run 100 miles, you get one of these suckers. So out of all the 100-mile races that I've done, they're all different and unique, but without a doubt, the Leadville 100 is my favorite. This town was born in 1880 up in the middle of the gold rush in the Rocky Mountains, and the stories and history in this town are just incredible. The people that went there struggling with nothing and made it.
Where's that race? Is that the high altitude race?
Yeah, it's a high altitude race. It's absolutely spectacular. And they got the best finishing buckle in the business, too. So, running 100 miles can be very destructive. The training can be a lot harder than the race. But I would say, with all my experience and all the things I've done in running, I would say if you could make running 100 miles one thing in your life that you wanted to try to do, I'd say go for it. It's such a difficult thing. But forever and ever and ever, I will be a different person and be stronger for it because I was able to do it. So ultra running is it's my identity. It's something that it's who I am, and it's been one of the greatest experiences of my life. And I hope to motivate you guys to go out and go for it. If you have any more questions, I'll be standing out there for the rest of the morning. One of the things that most people fail to recognize is, in order to consider running 50 miles or 100 kilometers or 100 miles or even a 5K, is breaking down your running to what I call the lowest common denominator. And for me, that's the mile. Starting at the mile and how well you can run a single mile is extremely important. You've got trainers and coaches out there, and they'll give you all kinds of training programs based on trying to perform well at various distances. And I feel that after a lot of personal experience, if I was ever going to go back into running, I would focus all my attention on the singular mile. Because pretty much everything beyond the mile is going to be based on what you can do at the mile. So if you've never really trained hard to run your best mile, and you run a 5K and you're kind of wondering what could you run a half marathon or a marathon at, you need to go backwards. You don't want to build up to the 10K or the half marathon. You want to go backwards. It's a big thing for me. Go back to the mile. It's a critical thing. And I'll tell you a quick story that's kind of funny and why I think we should look at the mile more as the base of all other distances. I did a 12-hour run about 5 or 6 years ago. A 12-hour run it was a loop course. It was a 1-mile loop, and everybody runs for 12 hours, and whoever runs the most miles in those 12 hours wins. And I met a guy at the race who didn't seem like he knew much about running. He didn't really have things set up for aid for himself. He didn't seem to have really good running gear or shoes or even clothing. He was running in basketball shorts. And I asked him, I said, what are you doing here? It doesn't look like you're really a runner. He goes, well, I read this book called Born to Run. And it just fascinated me, and I want to see what I can do. And I said, well, have you run before? He goes, no, this is my first race. And I said, are you really kidding me? I said, you jumping into a 12-hour run and you've never even done like a 5K? He goes, no, man, I want to do the long stuff. And this was like, about 2 hours into this thing, and I could see he was really struggling. And about 10 hours into this race, I think I was somewhere in, I don't know, 60 or 60 miles or something into it. I was pushing hard, and this guy was a mess. I mean, he was walking like this, and he was still going. And I ran past him, and I said, I go, born to run, huh? He didn't laugh too much. He just, but he just kept dragging along. And I felt sorry for the guy, and I actually got his information, or my wife got friendly with him after the race, and she stayed in touch with him on Facebook. And as I know of today, he still hasn't run a race since. So it's important to realize you get these numbers in your mind. You hear about people running 100-mile races, and it seems awesome. You got to go back to the lowest common denominator. If you want to be a successful runner, start at the mile. And I'm going to give you some information about the mile. Why is the mile important? Well, a mile is a perfect blend of all the things that go into all other distances above the mile. You got your leg speed, you've got your endurance, you've got your stamina, and you've got the mental and emotional component all in that one distance. And what you do, another great thing about the mile is you don't have to put a lot of time into training for the mile. If you want to try to train for a half marathon or a marathon, it's a huge commitment. Most people don't ever give themselves the training and the time to really see what their peak potential is. But you can peak in the mile with relatively very little training per week. I recommend people that want to train for the mile can do it in less than 2 hours a week total. And still run a very high quality mile PR. So the mile, it proves what your oxygen transport carrying potential is, how well you can clean out lactic acid from your muscles, and also, again, your mental focus, your tolerance for pain, which becomes really important in these other distances. So if you can run a mile at a peak level, and I think that takes time to get to that peak level, you can determine all your other performance levels at all other distances. I know that based on my mile time, I can do X amount of miles in 24 hours. And then I can do, from there I can break it down to what I can run 100 miles in, what I can run 100K, what I can run 50 miles in, the marathon, the half marathon, all the way down to the 5-kilometer distance. And the formulas aren't a secret. They're not something that I came up with. These things are readily available on lots of different, let's say, very credible websites. Jeff Galloway is a fantastic runner. He's a former Olympian. He has a very good predictor formula on his website. There's something called the McMillan formula, which is well known. And on letsrun.com is the highest quality website that I can recommend related to anything running. And people there that know running and study running will agree that based on your mile time, you will be able to run all other distances or predict what those distances are. So I'm going to go over some elite runners, and I'm going to tell you about what their mile times are, and then I'm going to tell you what they were able to do at all other distances. And it's held true for me as well. Haile Gebrselassie, he's arguably the greatest runner of all time. Pound for pound, this guy is just, I just got the chills. Understanding what this guy has done is just incredible. He's Ethiopian. I think he's held more than 25 world records, and he's still running, and he's 40 years old. His mile time is approximately 3 minutes and 44 seconds, and that's based on his 1,500-meter record time. He never actually ran the mile competitively at a high level, but based on his 1,500-meter time, he's about 3:44. His 5-kilometer time, his average pace for 5 kilometers is 4 minutes and 4 seconds per mile average. So you're going to want to remember these numbers. Based on your peak performance in the mile, and this holds true at an elite level if you're really training hard, you add 20 seconds to your best mile time, and that's going to be your average for 5K. So Haile Gebrselassie has run 3:44 for the mile. For 5K, his average pace is 4:04. For 10 kilometers, these are all very standard distances. If you want to race, these are the distances you're going to be running a lot. For 10K, he's run 4 minutes and 15 seconds average per mile. So that's 30 seconds slower per mile average than his mile time. For the half marathon, he's added 45 seconds to his best mile time, which was 4 minutes and 30 seconds per mile for 13.1 miles, which is incredible. For the marathon, he was the world record holder up until just not too long ago. And he is, his marathon best average mile time is 60 seconds slower than his best mile. So if you can run a mile in 3 minutes and 44 seconds, you're going to want to run the marathon in 4 minutes and 44 seconds average. So my personal times, my best mile in high school was 4 minutes and 36 seconds. And just about my 5K, 10K, half marathon, marathon times have all been those slightly slower per mile averages. So again, I'm going to repeat this. You might want to write this down. For 5K, 20 seconds slower per mile. For 10K, 30 seconds slower per mile. For the half marathon, 45 seconds slower per mile. For the marathon, 1 minute slower per mile. And since we're talking about ultra running, and you can't find these formulas, this is going to be my opinion. For 50 miles, you want to run 1 minute and 45 seconds slower to 2 minutes slower. 145 to 2 minutes slower than your best mile time. So if you can run a mile in 5 minutes, if you want to run your best 50 mile time, you should be able to do it below 7 minute average. For the 100 kilometers, I believe it's 2 minutes slower than your best mile time. For 100 miles, I give it 3 minutes. So if you can run a mile in 5 minutes flat, you should be able to run 100 miles at 8 minute average. For 24 hours, I've got down 4 minutes to 4.5 minutes slower than your best mile. So ultra running is getting more popular for people that don't have super fast mile times. Because if your best mile, if you go on the track and you train hard for the mile and your best mile is only 7 minutes and 30 seconds, which is not that fast, you should be able to run 100 miles in 17 hours and 30 minutes, which in most races will put you very high up in the finishing results. For a 24-hour race, you're going to be able to, if your best mile was 7 minutes and 30 seconds, you add 4 minutes to that, you should be able to run 11 minutes and 30 second pace for 24 hours. If you're a woman, you're going to run 125 miles in 24 hours. That will put you in the top 5 national results. So if you're not a fast runner, you can still do really well with the ultra distances. And I think that's important to hold on to. So, specifically talking about mile training. I love the track, and I think that's the best place to really see what you can do. It's pretty simple. I believe that you should run 6 days a week, and I think 3 of those days should be easy, casual running. 3 miles on the track. Do 12 laps. Nice and comfortable, just so you're breathing normal, not stressing yourself out too much. 2 of those days, you want to do 400 meter repeats. That's 1 loop of the track, and the key here is to do it so when you get to the 10th repeat, you feel like you really don't want to do 2 more. And one thing that a lot of coaches argue about is how much rest you should put in between each 400 meter. I believe that you should give yourself no more than 45 seconds rest between each 400 meter lap repeat. So that would be 3 days easy. 1 of the days per week should be 400 meter repeats with not too much rest in between each repeat. And then 1 day you want to do 800 meter repeats. And I suggest doing 6 of those. And I believe you should not take more than 60 seconds rest in between each 800 meter. So depending on what your skill levels are, you can pace yourself. You want to be very tired after those hard workouts. And however fast your mile time gets after a couple of weeks or a couple of months, depending on what kind of fitness you're in, you should be able to add those times that I just went over for your 5K, 10K, half marathon, marathon, 50-mile times, and you should be able to say, okay, I should be able to run 100 miles in this amount of time if you do the training. But everything should start with the mile. Go back to the mile, guys. I can't stress that enough. So I'm going to give you what I've done for being successful at ultra distances. In my mind, the ultra distance kind of starts at 50 miles. 50K, 60K, 30 miles, it's still kind of a marathon in my mind. So for 50 miles, I suggest people focus on doing big, high mileage. I'm a big believer in big distance, and that means a lot of time. You want to be a great ultra runner, then you got to learn to suffer, and you got to learn to just get out there and put in the time, tons and tons of time. Tons of time doesn't necessarily mean tons of consecutive time. One of the best American ultra runners is a guy named Ray Krolowitz. He started doing this stuff back in the late 70s and early 80s. This guy's won more ultras than anybody, and he's kind of an unknown for most people. And Ray is somebody that's taught me a lot. He never ran more than 20 miles at a time in training, but sometimes he'd do triples in the same day. So he was doing, some days he'd run up to 60 miles in a day, but he would never run more than 20 miles at a time. And I tried to mimic that. In my training, I would run to work in the morning 15 miles, work all day, try to stay on my feet while I was at work, and then run home. And that made me extremely strong. So I can't stress enough, if you want to be successful at ultra running, you got to be committed to big mileage. I believe that anybody in the world ultra running that's been extremely successful is running big mileage. Don't run too much at one time, but run a lot. I believe you need to run at least 120 miles a week to be successful at any distance, any ultra distance, which is going to be 50 miles or more. And then one thing that I don't want to talk about too much, but mileage, as you increase your mileage, you need to increase your sleep. That's a core component. I've talked about that in all my other lectures. One of the reasons why I was able to sustain 120 miles a week, most weeks I was running over 150 miles a week, is because I was doing 10 hours in bed at night. I'm just going to mention that quickly. I talked about it in my other lectures. You need to sleep. That's how you rest. Rest is not about running less. It's about sleeping. Sleeping is rest. I've run more than 180 miles in a week, and at this point in my career, I think running over 180 miles a week is probably not a good idea. I know some guys that run over 200 miles in a week. I wouldn't go above 150 to 160. I think that's kind of the sweet spot. If you want to run any ultra distance, even up to the 24-hour races, multi-days. I think above that, even if I'm sleeping a lot, I just can't recover to stay fresh. And then a lot of people that I've talked to think that I'm a lover of junk miles, or what they call junk miles, because most of my ultra running miles is pretty slow. And I don't like to call them junk miles, I like to call them base miles. And if you want to be a good ultra runner, you got to get used to running a lot. And you can't run that fast. You got to force yourself to run pretty slow. For me, the base miles should never be faster than 2 minutes slower than your current mile PR, your current mile PR time. So if I'm in shape to run a mile at 5 minutes, I am not going to do my base mileage any faster than 7-minute miles. I think it's really important to get patient with running slow and running a lot. It's a form of meditation, and you've got to accept that. You've got to embrace, a little bit of suffering and just accept it. It's a big part of not only the physical fitness, but also the emotional and mental fitness, and trying to be okay with being on your feet and moving for a very, very long period of time. So in terms of how much I run and when I run, I run 6 to 7 days a week. 4 or 5 of those days are going to be my base miles, or what some people call junk miles, where I run to work, easy, and I run home. And then 1 day a week, I'm doing big miles. I might do a Ray Krolowitz workout, where I'll run 20 miles in the morning, 20 miles at lunch, and maybe 20 miles in the evening. My long days are usually 50 to 60 miles in that day. I believe personally that you want to be able to run 50 miles in training and be confident with that and be strong enough to handle that every week. So when I was doing my best running, once a week I was putting in a 50 to 60 mile run. And it did wonders for me. I'm not scared of 50-mile distance at all. To me, it feels like a regular run. And then the other core workout that I would do once a week would be a tempo. So even when I was training for 100-mile races or beyond that, I would still try to do a 5K to 10K tempo at least once a week to keep myself fresh, and I think that's very important. So you want to maintain that speed and that pain threshold. And I think it's a good idea to race once a week in those shorter distances instead of doing a tempo by yourself. I did a lot of 10K loops in Central Park when I was really doing my peak running, and it kept me on my toes, and I highly recommend racing to stay in shape. And that's pretty much how I trained to become the ultra runner that I became in the last 5 years. Big miles, It's not that complicated. Focus on the mile first, and then build from there.
What about hill training?
All right, so the question is hill training. If your goal is ultra running, and I guess you want to look at the type of race that you're going to be entering. So I'm a road runner. That's my specialty. I like the road. I like to run fast. I feel like trail or hill training running is almost a different sport. So what I'm talking about, running 150, 160 miles a week, that wouldn't apply to somebody that lives in Colorado at 8,000 feet. That would be way more training than what I'm doing on the road. So hill training, I wasn't a fan of hill training just because that wasn't my focus. It would be, I guess I'd have to adjust all the numbers and put it into hours. I was running 25 to 30 hours a week. If you're going to move it to the mountains, do that and don't focus on the mileage number.
One more question, do you walk at all if you run, like 10s and 1s?
The question is, do I walk? On the long days, the days where I would try to run 50 to 60 miles, if I felt like I needed to walk, I would take walking breaks for a few minutes, try not to get stuck on having to keep moving. But you want to be able to be in a place, fitness-wise, where you don't need to walk, and you want to build up to that. When I'm racing 50 miles, yes, I would not walk. Where do I put my foot when I'm hitting the ground? Am I a heel striker, a forefoot striker? It's an interesting question. I have an opinion which some people might disagree with. I think trying to change your form is counterproductive in a lot of instances. I think if you try to become a forefoot runner or a chi runner, you could potentially create issues for yourself. I think, it's funny, my training partner, when I'd see him running, I couldn't recognize his face at all. He might be, a quarter mile away, but I could see his gait. I could recognize how this guy runs from far distance, and that's just how his style is. And I think it's important to embrace your biomechanics the way they are naturally, and not try to get too stuck on changing your form too much. I know people have tried to change their form. Some elite runners have focused on trying to change their form a lot or try to become forefoot strikers, and they've gotten injured. I think the most important thing in studying where you strike your foot is not where you strike your foot, whether it's the heel or the forefoot, it's where you weight the foot. Where do you put the load on your foot? There's elite runners that hit with their heel, there's elite runners that hit with their toes. But what's common throughout all those guys is when you study them in slow motion, they are weighting their foot. They're putting the weight load when it's directly under them. So, there's a company called Newton. They make shoes where they put like a pad in the forefoot to kind of force you to weight to become more of a forefoot striker. It's a gimmick. Heel strikers, forefoot strikers, it's all about where you weight the foot. So if you're running slow and you find yourself kind of digging in with your heel, yeah, obviously you're probably a little bit overweight or you're just getting started. But most people, as they run, will naturally weight the foot. It doesn't matter where you strike it, where they'll weight the foot when it's directly underneath them. And I think that just comes with time and practice. How much do I eat and what's my caloric intake when I'm doing, let's say, 50 or 60 miles in a day as training? As a fruitarian, I eat low fat and I eat lots of fruits and vegetables. So I'm really into the sugar thing. I think sugar is what you want. And when I'm training, I'm eating about 300 to 400 calories per hour. That's what I try to do. If I eat 500 calories an hour or 600 calories an hour, I don't think there's a bad reason to do that. If you want to eat more, I think it's fine. You just don't want to eat less than I try to hit 400 calories an hour. So the question is, not during the run, but after I run, am I watching how many calories am I burning per day? So if I run for 8 hours in a day and I do my calculations, so do I make sure I'm eating, let's say, 6,000 or 7,000 calories for the day? The answer is I don't watch my calories. I eat until I'm full. And that's pretty much it. And I think it's important to note that I'm eating high water content foods, and it's extremely important that you're going to the bathroom at least 10 times a day. You got to flush your system out. If I could just pee all day long, I would do it. Because I'm just constantly cleaning out my system. So high water content fruits, fantastic. I can't recommend them highly enough. Do I do any cross training? And the answer is no. Running is pretty much all I'm doing because I'm running so much when I'm training for ultras.
What was your training like when you were training to run Badwater?
Question is, what was my training like when I was doing Badwater? I was running about 150 to 180 miles a week. I was trying to run in warm weather, and then during the race, the heat is the biggest issue there. It's just trying to keep ice on my head so I stayed cool. But for 100 miles or more, you just got to do big mileage and try not to run more than 20 miles at a time, but still keep the mileage real high. Question is, do I take any breaks throughout the year? Over the last 5 years where I was really going hardcore at ultra running, I really did not ever take a down season. There was virtually not a week that I ran less than 100 miles. I don't know if that's a good idea. I know Scott Jurek, he's told me that he takes off 1 to 2 months every year where he doesn't run at all. Maybe my career would be longer if I took more time off, but I enjoy running. And I think once you start becoming a high mileage runner, it becomes part of your lifestyle. I embrace it. It's something I do. It's just part of my everyday activity. I use my running not only to have a form of meditation, but also transportation. I can't tell you how good it felt to run to work. It took me 2 hours to get to work every morning. And then at the end of the day, I just hit the switch and I put my shoes on and I run home. Question is, do I have any particular fruits that I find my performance is better on? I'm a huge fan of oranges. I juiced a lot of oranges, ate a lot of oranges. Oranges are extremely high water content. They're fantastic. I lived on oranges for a huge part of my ultra running success. Question is, when I was building up to the ultra running, did I do stuff for injury prevention and related activities? I built up to, let's say, 160 to 180 mile average per week over, I'd say, 3-year period. I remember after I was running pretty seriously for about 2 years, I hit 100 miles one week, and that was a huge milestone. And then I remember when I got to 150 miles, and I kept thinking, wow, this is like really big mileage. And I think the biggest barrier for me was just building up slowly and mentally not letting it scare me too much. So I think most of us, when we get up to running on a consistent basis, we can really be in tune with our body. If I only was able to sleep 8 hours that night, I would take the train halfway home. I'd back off a little bit. You get very in tune with your body, but you want to run slow. I think if you're running slow, you're not going to really get injured as long as you're getting enough sleep and you're eating a fruitarian or fruit-based diet. That's my opinion. So I would just build up. If you're trashed and even though you're sleeping 10 hours a night, back off and build up. I didn't go from 0 to 150 miles a week in 1 year. It took time. Question is, what kind of food do I carry with me? When I first got into the fruit-based diet, fruitarianism, it was like a religion to me, and I wouldn't eat anything unless it was 100% raw, and I did dates. And out of convenience, mostly convenience, I do gels now, which is maltodextrin. They're easy to carry. I can carry 1,000 calories on me in my hands. I just need water. There's no fiber, so I'm not going to the bathroom that much. It works for me. I can't say that I had problems eating dates. Just logistically, it was difficult to carry them. And in ultras, I would go to the bathroom more than I wanted to. If you want to run 100 miles and you're worried about, your friends, family, social issues, people thinking you're totally nuts because you're also eating largely a diet of fruits and vegetables, I'd say don't think about other people. Everybody, I think, should run a 100-mile distance in their lifetime. And I just think that running 100 miles or, walking 100 miles, moving consecutively for 100 miles is a spiritual event. And I think I just can't put words to it. Everybody should do that. I want every one of my kids at one time in their life to do a 100-mile distance. They don't have to do it in a race, but I think they should train and build their bodies up, build their minds up to be able to accomplish something like that. It's incredible. It's so empowering. It gives you so much confidence.
But did you always encounter your family or any of your,
I questioned my own sanity thinking I wanted to run 100 miles. 100 miles is 20 more miles than 80 miles. It's a really, really long distance. 100 miles still scare me. Question is, how do I manage time with doing all that running? You got to build it into your transportation. If I ever was moving somewhere where I had to work in a different location, I would try to live 2 hours away. 2 hours away. If you run slower, it's still, do you want 2 hours is a really good amount of time to run. The question is, do I ever do interval training or high intensity stuff? And the answer is yes. I was saying before, I still believe once a week you should try to do a 5K, 10K, or half marathon race. I wouldn't race more than a half marathon, but if you could do that once a week when you're in good shape, I think it's a great way to stay sharp. I was able to run a 100-mile distance at a high level, and I was also able to run a half marathon at a high level, all in the same week. Specifically related to ultra running, I don't recommend doing like high leg turnovers, super fast 30-second sprints. I don't personally find the benefit for ultra running. Question is, do I do any visual training or mental kind of like, you know, trying to envision myself running or my training? And I'd say, yeah, I think I'm always thinking about running. When I got any kind of challenge, I think about running at night with a headlamp, and I'm just going to keep going. So it's in my consciousness all the time. And I think it helps. But the only way to get there is to get to that running all night with a headlamp. Well, I'll give you a quick story. I did not finish my first 2 attempts at the 100-mile distance. So as great as a runner as I became, I failed pretty badly at the first 2 attempts. I struggle with that. I like finishing things that I start. And it comes down to a mental training more than anything else in the ultras. You have to have this die-hard mindset where you're going to have confidence in your body and you're not going to give up unless you're really at a situation where you could create permanent damage to your body or potentially die.
What's your training like now, and also your running goals now that, as you said, you're kind of past your peak running days?
The question is, what are my goals now that I'm not running as much? I'll be 37 pretty soon. I was pretty much a full-time runner for over 7 years, and I was trying to do it at a very high level. I had a lot of goals outside of just personal performances. I was trying to set an example and create attention towards a fruit-based diet, and my family suffered a lot for it. Running 30 hours a week requires at least 70 hours of sleeping a week. So right now I'm retired from running. I run nothing even close to what I used to run, and I'm trying to focus on my wife and kids and trying to give back and let them have some dreams. So I'm not running that much right now. It's tough. It's it's a struggle for me. That's a good question. How much easier or more difficult is it to train with somebody or without somebody? I would say I probably don't appreciate how important it was to have a training partner. Maybe some of you guys remember or saw Oz Perlman, the magician who was here. He's my main training partner. He would meet me every day when I was running to the city to go to work. So I had a training partner, I would say 5 out of 7 days a week, and I think that made it much easier. So yeah, a training partner would be very important, but I know highly successful ultra runners that train alone. And there were a lot of times where I did train alone, and it was harder, but if you have the option to have somebody to train with, I would say seek them out. Go for it. Question is about shoes. I would run most of my miles when I was pushing for fast marathon times in racing flats, like marathon racing flats, light shoes under 8 ounces. In the last 2 years, I became a huge fan of Hoka's, which are extremely thick shoes, but are extremely soft, have tremendous amount of support. They're heavier, relatively speaking, but I became a huge fan of them. I think long term, if you're running in shoes that have a lot of cushioning, it's just going to allow your body to take less stress, and it's going to prolong your career. So I'm a big fan of Hoka's, and I'm not sponsored by them, but I believe in them a lot.
And how often did you get a new pair?
How often did I get a new pair of shoes? With the Hoka's, I'm running the same pair of shoes for 2.5 years. And I just put shoe glue on the bottom. They've got so much cushioning. So even though they cost about $160, $170, it's a huge value because I've got thousands of miles on them and they're still good. All right, if you don't have any more questions, I want to remind you, you want to focus on the mile. See how fast you can run a mile, and then you can replay this and add those seconds to the mile distance, and you're going to be able to know how fast you should be able to run all those other distances. If you think you want to run a marathon, you think you want to run 50 miles, you can figure it out real easy. Just go out there, train hard, do those 400-meter repeats with not too much rest, put in 2 hours a week, get your mile time down, and then you could walk off the track and say, you know what, I could run 100 miles in this amount of time. And then you just got to put in the distance. You got to put in those base miles, put in the work. Let'sRun.com. Let'sRun.com. Phenomenal, phenomenal website. I'm not on Facebook. I'm on Let's Run.
What's your favorite ultra you ran?
Question is, what's my favorite ultra that I've run? They're all different. I'd say the one closest to my heart was probably the Spartathlon. It's 153 miles, and it's a very, very difficult race because they only give you 36 hours to finish it, which means you have to move. And I DNF'd my first attempt at it. So to finish the Spartathlon was really kind of my crowning achievement that I hold dear to my heart. That's really incredible. Other ones, I really like track running. Running 100 miles on a track is amazing. You can get so deep into just almost like a hypnotic state. It's almost like being on drugs or something. It's just incredible. So I really like track running. I like loops. Question is, do I do heart rate monitors or anything like that? No. I think if you're doing those base miles, if you're starting to build up over 100 miles a week, you get so in tune with your body. You know exactly what your hydration state is. You know exactly what your blood sugar rate is. And it takes years. It took me almost 8 years of training to run 100 miles under 13 hours. And I built on every one of my gains. So you got to have a lot of patience. Ultra running is a brutally unforgiving sport. But it's equally as fantastic.